second, can we do a roll call?
Yes, it's Eric Brownfield,
Here.
Tyler Denham,
Here.
Karen Flores. Here. Sandy Flores. Here. Jackie Kellogg. Here. Devonna McLaughlin. Here. Moses Milazzo.
Here.
Corey, is it Rungy? Rungy.
Here.
Russ Schaefer. Not here. Sean Slauson.
Here.
Glenn Slivers.
Here.
Haley Zaroya. Here.
All right. Thank you everyone for being here today. A few housekeeping reminders to start. This meeting is being recorded. If joining online, please avoid using the chat box for general chatter. Instead, enter a C or Q if you have a comment or question during the meeting. Also, please keep yourselves muted if you're not speaking to avoid audio issues. And finally, if you need to leave the meeting early, please let me know so I can note the time for the meeting minutes and do a quorum check. And now, a refresh on agenda item 3 for our new commissioners. The Housing Commission has a land acknowledgement that is read at the beginning of each meeting, the text of which is in the agenda. I always ask for a volunteer to read the land acknowledgement, though it doesn't necessarily have to be done that way. But so long as it is, would anyone like to volunteer to read the land acknowledgement?
I'll do it.
Thank you.
So Jackie does. The Housing Commission humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place is home.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
And next, we move on to agenda item 4 and open the meeting up to public comment. Adriana, is anyone queued up for public comment, or did you receive any public comments by email?
No. And Tyler, will you read that public comment blurb?
Yes. Before speaking, please note that due to open meeting laws, the commission cannot discuss or act on items presented during this portion of the agenda. To address the commission on an item that is on the agenda, please wait for the call for public comment at the time that item is heard. And when giving public comment, please state your full name. But in this case, there's no one for public comment.
No, I don't see anything in the chat either.
Okay. In that case, we'll truck right along to agenda item 5A for the consideration of approval of minutes for the commission meeting on July 27th. I will entertain a motion if someone has.
I move to approve the minutes from the prior meeting. I'll second.
Okay. Wait, speak.
It was Andy and then Jackie.
Karen.
Sorry. Same last name.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry about that.
We have a motion by Karen and a second by Sandy to approve the minutes.
By Jackie.
To approve the minutes on July 27th. Is there any discussion on the minutes? If no discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries and the minutes are approved. Next, we'll move to action and discussion items with agenda item 6A, a warm welcome to our 2 new housing commissioners. If you don't mind, can you each give a brief introduction and just no particular order, I say start with Corey.
Yeah, hi, everybody. My name is Corey Grundy. I work at the Narva Institute running some housing programs that they have along with some other companies. I have a background in criminal justice and worked in the intersection of criminal justice and mental health for 20 years or more. And with the kind of inclusion of housing as healthcare, that's kind of added to my repertoire. So I focus on circumstances relating to what impacts health conditions as it balances justice and housing. I've lived in Flagstaff for 25 years. I graduated at NAU and I've raised my kids and just to love the outdoors and the Flagstaff.
Thanks.
It's nice to meet you and we really appreciate your volunteering your time for the Housing Commission. Thank you.
and Eric.
Yes, hi, Eric Brownfield. Hello, everybody. Flagstaff native, graduate from NAU. I'm a realtor right now, 10 years in the business with Realty One Group.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for volunteering your time with the Housing Commission.
Absolutely.
And should we take the time for all the other commissioners to introduce themselves, or do we not have time for that? Okay. Yes.
This is so great in person.
All right, in that case, we'll move right on to 6B, which is election of a chair and vice chair for terms ending September 28th, 2024. Now, this item is a bit tricky, as whoever becomes the chair will need to take over the rest of the meeting, as my term as chair actually ended last month, and the prior vice chair is no longer on the commission. But I'm confident we can get through it. And I'll open the discussion with my own piece. Serving as the chair over the past year has been a great learning opportunity, facilitated by the amazing Adriana Fisher. The procedural mechanics, how to facilitate discussions, how to manage time, all very useful skills, even outside of the context of the Housing Commission. And I don't want to hog that learning opportunity. I'm happy to step up for a second term if the commitment doesn't fit with anyone's schedule. But if anyone is interested, I highly encourage you to throw your hat in the ring. And yeah, so that's my piece, and I'll open up to everyone else.
Are we able to nominate?
Yeah.
I believe you can self-nominate, or you can also nominate other people
I would like to nominate Devon McLaughlin.
for the chair.
Chair.
The response to one. Very.
What? Yes, I would love to nominate you. Thanks. For chair.
Okay.
This is where I have to talk.
If-
So I'm happy to take on that role, if the commission so chooses, for elections. If not, you know, whoever we choose is an amazing person. I'm sure we're all awesome. So, it'll be fun.
Okay,
Yeah, I was actually gonna nominate Devonna and Moses because they're they're very involved in every meeting, so.
be very balanced too, yeah.
I don't know if I can accept the
Okay.
nomination. I'm super busy.
You're super busy.
I'm
Okay.
also serving as liaison. I don't know if I can serve two roles at the same time.
He's got a tough job.
Cool. All right.
Do we actually have an answer for that, whether it's possible for someone serving as a liaison to another commission?
It sounds like his time is not gonna allow it, so I think we'll get on the path.
Yeah, that's already.
But we can take a vote once, so we have some nominations. Anybody else?
And it's open for vice chair and chair.
Yes.
So you're looking for nominations for both
Yes.
Yeah.
at the same time. Okay, all right, perfect. Because then, I would nominate second for vice chair.
I think Tyler's done a great job. And
Yeah, I do too.
Tyler as well.
Yeah.
So that he can choose not to be nominated if he would like to.
Okay. I did mean when I said it, it's been a great learning opportunity, you know, hiccups along the way, but that's how every learning opportunity goes. And I do want to be cognizant of sort of hogging that learning opportunity. So I definitely would step up if it didn't work with anyone else's schedules, but if someone is genuinely interested in the position, I'm happy to support them. And of course, I think Donna and Sandy are great. Yeah, so I'd be happy to support nomination of them to chair and vice chair respectively.
Sorry, did you nominate
Tyler, yeah.
for chair or vice chair?
I'll do vice chair so that he can swap out with chair.
Okay,
And did you accept? them?
I do think, Sandy, you're interested in it, right?
I mean, I wasn't declining.
Okay, I think I will vote for Sandy. I mean, I guess we can have some competition here, but I'll vote for Sandy personally.
You're welcome to keep your hat around.
So Tyler, are you accepting a nomination for vice chair and you're nominating yourself for chair?
I
We
am
can
accepting
have
a
all this.
nomination for vice chair. I do not nominate myself for chair.
Okay, fantastic. So we have 2 vice chair nominations and then we have a chair nomination.
Yes.
Do we want to take a
Everybody's.
vote real quick?
Is everyone comfortable with going ahead and voting? And do we structure the vote like one at a time? Like this person, this person, this person?
For the minutes, I think it would be great.
Okay. In that case, we can all vote now for Devon McLaughlin as the chair of the Housing Commission for a term expiring September 28th, 2024. If in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I
I'm
can,
loving this eye contact, Tyler.
Did you move for that and did we have a second?
oh, do I have to have a motion in a second? Or is it?
It's just a vote. So if everybody votes for Devonna,
Okay,
say aye.
all right.
Christina's gonna be horrified.
Well, I'll say that was a successful vote. Congratulations to Donna McWilson for becoming the chair of the House. All right, and then.
Let's do the same thing for vice chair.
Okay,
Okay, so
so if in favor of Sandy Flores becoming the vice chair of the Housing Commission for a term expiring September 28th, 2024, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Sandy Flores, congratulations on becoming the vice chair of the Housing Commission.
I want to make clarification. Did everybody vote for Sandy to be vice chair?
I was gonna
Yeah.
vote for Tyler. Just.
Okay, so 1 vote for Tyler,
Yes.
Okay.
9 for Sandy.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Okay, so Sandy voted for Tyler. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Devonna, are we ready?
No, but I am happy to try. So,
Okay.
learning experience, immensely.
You got this.
All right.
Okay, so
I'm correct in thinking we're on 6C then?
Yes.
I'm here for support. All you have to do is just basically
Basically contacting, go.
public comment goes after the presentations. And then we just want to make sure that we stay on track with the agenda item.
Perfect. So in order to make this even more exciting for you all, I'm gonna recuse myself on this topic. And turn it over to. I came parliamentary procedure. So anyway, bye-bye.
Okay, here we go, learning opportunity commence ×2. All right, so next up is a presentation and discussion of the draft City of Flagstaff Community Homebuyer Assistance and Employer Assisted Housing Programs with consideration of a motion to forward the draft rental incentive bond program to City Council with a recommendation for approval. Christine.
Thank you so much. So there was a slight error in that motion. The motion is actually forwarding the recommendation is not for the bond rental incentive, but for the homebuyer assistance programs. So there's just a little copy paste error there. All right, so I am Christine Pavlik. I am the Housing and Grants Administrator for the city's housing section. Thanks for having me and letting me take some time to talk with you today about our affordable home ownership programs. You could go to the next slide, Adriana, or whoever, is it you? It's okay. So first I'd like to just give you a quick overview of the history of the city's homebuyer assistance programs, then talk about the suggested changes that are being recommended today by staff. Then I can answer any questions you might have, and I hope to receive a motion to forward these recommended program changes to City Council.
Hey, Christine, give me just 1 second.
Okay.
Somehow your notes view is online,
Oh,
like instead of a full presentation view.
see, that's what I want to have happen when I share.
So then just
And it's not-
everybody reads your notes and then, not that you have anything on in there.
I think you need to share your window instead of your screen.
Yeah,
Let me try that and see if it,
so start the presentation. Now, when you hit share. Oh, you're not sharing.
There you go.
Start sharing. Now say share. And then come down here to window. And go to.
is it going? Thank you, Sarah Dar, Housing Director for the housing.
tech specialist. Can you go to the next slide? So since there was someone, having a meeting. Oh, someone just joined the meeting and I think maybe they have their mic on, but it sounds like it's okay now. So I'll keep going. I'll just read what the motion should have said. It should say, hopeful that the Housing Commission will make a motion to forward the draft program changes to City Council with a recommendation for approval. All right, so just to give a little bit of a background, currently the City of Flagstaff contracts with Housing Solutions of Northern Arizona. That's why Devonna had to recuse herself from this item. They administer our homebuyer assistance programs. The current contract that we have in place now began in November of 2018 with just a one-year term and an option to renew for 4 additional one-year terms. And so the last renewal was issued last year in November 2022, and it will expire this year in November 2023. We still have some general funds available in this contract that were provided through the budget process, not this last year, but the year before. And so what we have found while working with our city procurement team is that the City Council could amend the current contract to include one more one-year term. And then any proposed changes could also be approved through a contract amendment by City Council. And it would only apply to the remainder of this contract with Housing Solutions, which at this time just includes general funds. So it would not continue into a bond funded program. That would be something new that we would start. So currently there is a little over $280,000 remaining for community homebuyer assistance loans, and as well as administration costs, which are pretty nominal. That's enough to do approximately 6 additional loans with the changes we're going to propose to you today. All right, so our homebuyer assistance program has 2 different facets. First, we're going to talk about our employer assisted housing program, and we call it EAH. One of those fun acronyms for you. So EAH was created in 2015 as the Flagstaff Police Department Employer Assisted Housing Program. It was expanded in the spring of 2018 to serve all eligible City of Flagstaff employees, and the assistance amount per household went from $7,000 up to $10,000. To date, the program has been utilized by 30 employees with loans averaging just a little over $8,300. The last time the police department specific employer assisted housing program was used was October 2020. And so we have recently consulted with the police chief, and we requested that the programs be combined, the general employer assisted housing and the PD employer assisted housing. So that's all drawn from one pot of funds. Currently, the balance is $175,000, and we request funds through the city budget process every spring. Although I don't think we did it just this last year because we had so much funding available. So the current program guidelines for our employer assisted housing program are that you must have been employed with the city for at least a year. You have to be a first-time homebuyer as defined by HUD in the Flagstaff area. It provides a 1-to-1 match up to $10,000 in the form of an interest-free deferred payment loan. And that loan is forgiven 10% per year. And the reason it's 10% instead of $1,000 for every year for 10 years is because some folks don't use the whole $10,000. Maybe they don't have enough match. Maybe they just don't need that much. So they might take $6,000 and then it would be forgiven $600 a year for every year of employment. The home purchase price currently in the program guidelines cannot exceed 125% of the FHA 203B mortgage insurance limit for the county. Currently, that's a little under $650,000. The home can be anywhere in the Flagstaff metropolitan planning area. The FMPO is what it's called. And so that means Belmont, Yoni Park, Kachina Village, all of those places are options for our employees to live. Even Williams is included in that. The loans are repayable when the home is sold, when it's no longer owned occupied, or if the loan is refinanced for cash out, or if someone ends their employment with the City of Flagstaff. And the housing section conducts an owner occupancy verification every 18 to 24 months to ensure compliance with the program. And we also keep an eye on whether or not folks have decided to leave their employment with the city. And then the second part of the Homebuyer Assistance Program is called the Community Homebuyer Assistance Program, and we refer that to as CHAP. This program, the city has administered some form of down payment assistance or community homebuyer assistance since 1998. So in 1998, pre-recession, the program was created to serve households up to 115% AMI. And the goal was to really hit those households that couldn't be served by federal funding. If you'll remember from all your Fund Housing 101, federal funds are almost always capped at 80% AMI. So it was originally called the Middle Income Housing Assistance Program. And since from 1998 to the recession, loans ranged anywhere from $10,000 up to $33,000. So $24,000 for down payment assistance and $5,000 for clothing cost assistance. So then when the recession came, obviously those general funds were not available for that program anymore. And we focused on using our federal funding sources, CDBG, to administer down payment assistance. Again, that has that 80% AMI limit. We did loans up to $15,000. But really found that the program spin down was very slow. Funds went unused and it was requested by the subrecipient that they be deobligated because nobody was able to purchase a home with that amount of assistance and at that level of an AMI. So in 2018, that was when we created the current Community Homebuyer Assistance Program. To date, we've provided 34 first-time homebuyers with loans totaling $521,000, and the average loan is about $14,000. Again, we have, this number is wrong, I apologize. We just had a home sale a month ago. So it was 313, we're now down a little below $300,000 available in that pot of funds. So some of the program guidelines for CHAP are very similar to EAH. You must be a first-time homebuyer in Flagstaff. The biggest difference is the home purchase has to be within the city limits. So if you're an employee, you can purchase a home anywhere nearby where you can reasonably live and travel into Flagstaff to work for the city of Flagstaff. But if you are not an employee of the city of Flagstaff and you're just a community member, you do have to buy your home within the city limits. You can imagine that makes it more difficult since oftentimes the homes that are more affordable are in those outskirts areas. The other difference is this is a 3-to-1 match up to $15,000. We do require that the client contribute a minimum of 1% of documented buyer funds. This means that it's not a gift. It's actually from the homebuyer's own savings account, and they can document that they've been saving those funds. And this program also includes that home purchase price limit. So let's talk a little bit about how the market has changed. This won't be a surprise to any of you. We've been talking about this for a long time, but in 2002, the median home sales price was $615,000 compared to just $236,000 in 2012. That's a 166% increase. And we are seeing that the median home sales price is continuing to go up this year in 2023. We have also seen quite the increase in interest rates. They fluctuated a bit since they first started rising after the pandemic when the Fed decided they needed to start raising them, but they really have remained high the last couple of months right now. This is from last week. We're at 7.19% for a 30-year fixed rate FHA loan compared to 2.97% just 2 years ago. And the last time mortgage rates were above 7% was 2002. And the last time they were even above 6% was 2008 in the summer times. So quite the difference. To give you an idea of the homes that are available on the market right now, I have a real estate friend who gave me some stats, and I'm sure a lot of you probably have access to this information as well. But when we looked yesterday, there were 16 FHA eligible properties with a sales price under $450,000. 9 of those were condos. Then there were 55 properties with a sales price between $450,000 and $700,000. 7 of those are condos, and 47 of the 48 non-condo properties are actually above $515,000. So virtually nothing between that $450,000 and that $515,000. A thing to remember about condos is even though sometimes they're lower priced than single family homes, the financing options available to lower income and first time homebuyer households are limited. And HOA fees can quickly make monthly payments unaffordable. And we're seeing those increases in HOA fees, not just at condos, but at single family homes as well. So just to give you an idea of the history of our program use, in 2019, we assisted 11 clients. The average AMI was 96%, and only one of those clients received an additional subsidy beyond down payment assistance in order to purchase a home. Last year, in 2022, we assisted 4 clients. They were all at 80% AMI or below, and all of them needed an additional subsidy. So that means they purchased a land trust property, which is subsidized through the city of Flagstaff as well. So it's double subsidy in order to be able to benefit from our down payment assistance. This also means we're not serving that middle income group. We're not serving folks from 80% to 125% AMI, even though the program allows it, because the assistance amount is not enough to get them into a home. So that brings us to some of our changes. So quickly, I'll go over what we're recommending for the employer assisted housing program. So we are recommending that we change this to a 2-to-1 match from a 1-to-1 match. That means 2 program dollars to every home buyer dollar. An employee could come in with $5,000 and receive $10,000. So instead of having to bring in their own. We are recommending that we add another component, an additional $10,000. However, this $10,000 would not be forgiven. It would be repaid at sale, refinance for cash out, employment or lack of owner occupancy. So that initial $10,000 would still be forgiven 10% per year. And the additional optional additional $10,000 would be repayable, although it would be interest free in a deferred payment. Also, we think that it's important to remove the home purchase price limits. These purchase price limits are already controlled through affordability and debt to income ratio program requirements. So if I am purchasing a home and I don't need the assistance, I'm not going to receive the assistance. There are program controls already to limit home purchase price to make sure that folks aren't buying more than they can truly afford. The goal is to have folks not housing cost burdened when they buy a home to be able to afford the home, but also not to be receiving assistance beyond what they need. Some of the changes to our CHAP program are to change from a 3-to-1 match of up to $15,000 to an 8-to-1 match. This is a 166% increase, which just happens to coincide with that increase in median home sales price. This would allow folks to access up to $40,000 in down payment assistance. Instead of having the client contribute 1% of the purchase price through documented buyer funds, we would request that they, or require that they contribute just $1,000 through documented buyer funds, and then their remaining contribution, that meets their match, can be from gifts. It can be from employer assisted housing programs or small loans from family members. And then again, wanting to remove that home purchase price limit simply because it's not necessary and it can create unnecessary limitations in the program. So just to give you some information that will be important for your decision making, the cities of Sedona and Cottonwood have both changed their workforce home ownership assistance and employer assisted housing programs. They actually offer a 4-to-1 match to their community home buyers and up to $40,000. And then same thing for Cottonwood. So, yeah, so I'm ready to answer any questions you might have. I'd love to entertain a motion for a recommendation, and then we hope to go to City Council October 17th with your recommendation if you'd like to make one today. And we'll be asking for these changes to be incorporated in an amended contract, as well as that extension with Housing Solutions of Northern Arizona so that they can finish this contract and these funds out.
Is there discussion?
I have several questions, so I'll just ask one and then start.
Oh, sorry, I guess we need to do public comment first. Here goes that one again. Sorry, is there public comment on this item?
Anybody online? In the world? Okay, now we're good.
Okay, I'm sorry, back to Moses, and then Tyler.
Thank you. I have several questions. I'll ask just my first one first. For the EAH program, you said the first-time home buyers within the Flagstaff area, that's what it applies to. But you said something that made me wonder, if somebody owns a home outside of the Flagstaff area, are they still eligible for a first-time home buyer if it's within Flagstaff? So could they be buying a second home is the question.
They would not be able to continue to own that home in the other community.
Okay, so-
They have to be only purchasing a home in Flagstaff.
Okay,
The idea is you came to work up here, maybe you moved from Phoenix, and now you can buy a home up here.
but you do have to
Yes,
dispose of the property before you are eligible. Okay, because the way you said something that
yeah,
made me think maybe you were saying that the first time aspect only applies to the Flagstaff area, but,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. And then I'll ask my others after.
Just to check my understanding, I've got a question. So you're looking to expand the criteria, the eligibility criteria, because at the moment, not enough people are qualifying or using the funds. Do you have any goals for how much of the funds you want to be in circulation, being, used by applicants versus being held back and available to future applicants?
So because we have our bond funds ready for us to develop a program for and get out into the community, that's $7 million. We would really like to see these funds spent, as quickly as possible. We're initially serving 8 to 11 homeowners a year. Right now, we've done 2 loans this year. So the goal isn't necessarily to expand eligibility. The goal is to expand usability. So what we're finding is I may walk in the door eligible for the down payment assistance, but $15,000 isn't helping me buy a home. I need more in down payment. I can't find any homes that are in my affordability range. That boost in extra down payment assistance, that requirement of less documented buyer funds allows folks to have a bigger buying power. So the hope is that we'll see these funds used right away. I think there are probably folks that are out there exploring, trying to find homes right now. Devon could speak to if they have clients that are kind of in a waiting period, trying to find homes they can afford that might already be eligible, and we find out that this has been increased and it might make the difference for them. So, yes, go ahead, Sarah.
Should you talk about revolving loan and program income?
Yes, so when folks do move out of their home, this doesn't actually count for general fund dollars. Those funds we have to request through the budget every year. However, now that we have the bond, those funds will go back into a revolving loan program. So if you buy a home with bond funds with down payment assistance, and 3 years later you move out, you pay that loan back, and then we can now loan those funds to another home buyer. So those $7 million will recycle in perpetuity.
The same thing happens with the general fund dollars for this program.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize they were reserved for us. They are, okay.
I just wanted to make a comment, since I do loans and deal with this every day. I just closed a loan for a gal who works for the city. It was last month, the month before. And I've been working with her for 2 years, and she finally was able to find a house, and it's not in Flagstaff. She's gonna have to travel 25 miles, I think, to come to work at the city. And we had to layer numerous programs to make it work, and it was a true struggle, and having this increase is going to help more people be able to get in the door, because I have a lot of people who are just sitting waiting to find a house that's going to be in their budget, and it's not going to happen. The prices are not going to come down. We have to bring the assistance up to match the house prices. So I think this is fantastic. It's not going to solve the problem, but it's definitely going to make a tremendous difference.
And that's one of the things we're hoping to kind of see the tremendous difference it makes, so that when we are developing a program for those bond dollars, we're going to know this made the difference, or we need to tweak it in this way. Here's what's still a barrier for folks. So we're really hopeful that we can spend these last 6-7 loans finding out if this really is helping homeowners find homes. And who knows how the market will change in the next year as well.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead, Jackie.
Oh, sorry, I'm not going to be calling.
Because I think I brought it up to council last year when we were discussing the home buying assistance programs not being utilized because they didn't meet anywhere near each other. And I think I'm really happy to see this happening.
So I had another question. You mentioned, I think it was 7 relatively lower priced homes. Do you have the statistics on how many of those are things like mobile homes on leased land and other things like that, that might actually impact the resale ability of those properties?
I can answer that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
A mobile home on leased land is not going to qualify for any.
I wasn't sure, so.
They're considered personal property.
Right.
So there are 16 units that are 16 properties that are FHA eligible, so that first time home buyer loan. 9 of them are condos, and what I've heard from professionals in the field, sometimes those condos end up not actually being FHA eligible.
They aren't.
I think they are, and
even
even
now staff currently, I don't think they are.
Okay, good to know this.
But you can get a spot approval on some, if the HOA will cooperate. But
It's complicated.
it pretty much, yeah. And like you said, the HOA fees knock them out of the affordability aspect of it.
Right. And that was my concern, was if it's on leased land,
Yeah, that'd be
that is a part of the purchase price, and that can be $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 a month, so.
Correct, yes.
Additional questions?
I would just like to say, make my own comment. I purchased my home through the Affordable Housing Coalition 20 years ago. I still live in that house, and without down payment assistance, I wouldn't have been able to do it. But at that time, I think it was, I don't know, 7,500 or 8,000. That was 20 years ago. And we're only at 15,000 right now. So I just think this is a huge opportunity for us to get more folks into home ownership. I don't, I have kiddos that are the age that I was then, and it's like, they won't have a chance with 15, so.
I have another question, why not go bigger?
That's a great question. Is that when I could punt to Christina? Is she in here still? She is out. Okay, cool. So one of the reasons we don't go bigger is one, we want to make sure that we aren't doing that if we don't really need to. We don't want to then not be able to help more people. We do hope to be able to have flexibility in the program so that we can respond to the market in case there is a scenario where we need to go bigger, in case we do see continued leaps in home sales prices as well as interest rates. We do have some concern from legal about gift clause regulations, and the Arizona Constitution has what's called a gift clause. Municipalities are not to be gifting money to individuals. It needs to have a collective community benefit in order to avoid issues with that gift clause. Perfect timing, Christina. So the bigger we go, the more of a headline it is. Potentially someone might be out there saying, absolutely not, we're going to sue the city over this. And so we want to tread lightly, make sure we're only making the changes we need to for those reasons.
So even with the median price being so high, these loans are still not pushing people into the space where they're anywhere near even 10% sometimes of the down payment. And so it still feels like it's just barely scratching and not really making a big bound forward in eligibility. And I don't want to, like, there are experts in here who know much better than I do, but I fear it won't make as big of an impact as it could. You don't have to go to the maximum every single time, but I don't know.
I think partly we are, I lost my thought, sorry. So we did have Housing Solutions kind of run a few scenarios using home buyers they've actually encountered, and they did feel like 40,000 would make a difference. But it does feel a bit like we're playing catch up with a market that's already changed.
Right.
So one of the other things is that we really want to be able to see how responsive you are and council is to the idea of changing the program as the market does. Maybe we don't wait 4 years to come with a change recommendation.
Is that something that could be put into this, review it next year and see if you are responsive and being effective, or is that too much extra?
Well, so what's nice about this is we only have those general funds for about 6 or 7 loans left. And then when we're ready to dig into our bond funded program, we have to start kind of from scratch anyway. And so it'll be a natural point to say, we need to change this program in this space. So it's kind of a natural 1-year reevaluation, which is exactly how we're looking at it. So you're right on track with us.
Sorry, Tyler.
Oh, no, that is actually exactly what I was gonna say. The trouble when we're dealing with like numbers here for parameters is it's hard to know. I mean, we have really good guesses, I'm sure we've got people with those backgrounds, but I feel like it's hard to know until you put it into practice whether those parameters actually work. And I was gonna suggest, are we gonna come back and look at it again, like a year or 6 months, if no one's still able to meet the criteria? So exactly what she said.
Okay. So just to make sure I'm understanding all of this, so when these funds are completely used up, then they will no longer be there and we will then go to the bond funds. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and the hope is to not have a gap. So our hope is while this is doing its thing, we are actively working to prepare. Probably we'll have to do a request for proposals again. That's what we did when this contract was initially awarded to Housing Solutions. We did a full procurement request for proposals, evaluated the proposals we received and then awarded a contract. Now with the bond funds, we may be able to work with multiple agencies that serve different populations. We're just not really sure yet because we're still just starting to do a lot of that research. So I would say in the next 6 months to a year, as those funds are spending down, you'll start hearing from us about what are your ideas, Commission? And do you like these ideas? Is this what we should take to council as a program idea?
Yeah, because I was thinking there could be a gap.
If there's,
We're hopeful to not have a gap.
if there were a gap, Sarah, didn't you say that the funds were replenished by general funds? Sorry.
I mean, is there a chance that that would refill gaps?
Tagging on what you said.
Good afternoon. It's like, you see my thoughts gathering. Did you see everything starting through? My name is Sarah Jar. I'm the housing director for the city. We have only ever requested new funds for this on an annual basis. However, because it's been in existence since the late 90s, we have survived some years fully on program income, with folks paying off at any one of those triggers of no longer owner occupied, refinancing with cash out or selling the home. There have been years where we've had more program income than we know what to do with. As interest rates go down and people refinance, people pay us back, that money goes straight back into this. And so perhaps we didn't even need to request. Our goal is not to have a gap. We're just hopeful that with these conditions and the amount of research that went into coming up with these recommendations, that it will function and this will create that framework to have a healthy start on the conversation of putting the bond funding program together. Did that make sense to everyone?
Yeah, so do you have a projection of what that program income will be over the next year versus outlay and that sort of idea, so that we have a better understanding of, do you expect to be out of funds for 6 months while you're waiting for somebody to sell their home or whatever, and then start to recover? Or do you have any idea what that's going to look like? I know it's hard, so.
Thank you for the acknowledgement that it's hard. Chair, Commissioner Milazzo. No, we don't have a projection. That's because the current program is built around those triggers. And that has been one of the most difficult things to budget over the years, because some years we're rolling in money and we can't get it out the door fast enough. In other years, when people are refinancing or selling, say, oh, I don't know, during COVID, we saw program income go down. This is one of the things that we want to bring forward for consideration in designing the bond funded program, is so that we could have a more predictable sense of what that repayment schedule might look like, because right now, we make estimates and our budget request numbers are due in like February, and we only have data through the end of December, so it's our best guess technology. Sometimes we hit it right on, sometimes we don't. So testing this way felt like still feels like a really safe way to give this a test before we work on that larger pot of much more influential.
So you keep saying that the hope is that there will be no gap. Will it, if you are expecting there to be a gap, is there anything you can do? Is there a way to respond quickly enough? Say 6 or 8 months from now, is there a way to respond quickly enough so that there isn't a gap for whatever reason? I don't know.
If it's 8 months, we're in next fiscal year.
Right.
In 6 months of the past, what we've done things like on a waiting list. One of the pieces is that it can take people quite a long amount of time to find funding. We also do have the ability to have conversations with our budget team, et cetera, to say, hey, we have identified this need and we have people qualified. There are times where folks aren't qualifying, where they're not mortgage ready, or it's going to take them some time to get to the point. So it's kind of it's a juggling of timing.
So, but if we ran fully out of money, our goal is to not have a gap. Our goal would be to have the bond program approved well before the next fiscal year begins. Well before.
And that can be approved at any point. It doesn't have to wait for the city's budget process to happen.
Not, and I will speak a little bit more about that on our next item.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. That's the question I should have asked right away was, does the bond
I
program?
always look forward to your questions.
Yeah, I have one left to offer on, and this does risk straying off topic too far, so stop me if it does. But I do remember reading about some of these programs in other cities that are dealing with that same issue of sometimes conditions change, we have too much money, other times we have too little money, and we can't change the parameters of the program fast enough to deal with that. And their solution has been to set up the program such that the parameters aren't hard set. What's hard set is the relative percent of money that's in circulation and active loans versus money that's being held in reserve available to future applicants. They target 80% out in the field, 20% reserved. And then they're allowed to change the parameters as conditions change in order to meet that percentage. Just food for thought.
Thank you for that. We experimented with that a number of years ago. And given that the money amounts that we've typically been dealing with for these programs for CHAP, they did not necessarily make the best sense for us because there are years where our allocation is about $100,000. And so to hold some of that back when we know there's need in the community. So things are different now, especially with that bond funding in play. So thank you for that idea, and we'll keep an eye on it as well as we move into development of the next program.
Any other questions? I will entertain a motion.
I will move to forward it to city council with recommendation for approval.
I'll second. Yeah.
It was like, okay, so it can be Karen. Sorry, what is it?
Karen Flores. Okay, we have a motion and a second to forward the draft changes to city council with a recommendation for approval. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Thank you all so much.
Now I'll hand it back to the farmer.
That's a good job. I was like,
Oh, thank you.
All right, let's see how I can mess this up. Awesome, thank you all. So I think we're on then to item 6D, which is a presentation and discussion of the draft rental incentive bond program with consideration of a motion to forward the draft rental incentive bond program to the city council with a recommendation for approval. Do I need to read the motion as well there, Adrian? Like the next couple, like okay, and then I shut up and turn it over to Ms. Stark. Is that what it looks like?
yeah, I'm gonna start it with Jen. There you go. Oh, your kids are really cute, Adrian. Jimmy said that they're just sort of like us.
That's exactly what it was.
They're actually most of the time just as good. Just like everybody's kids. Good afternoon. I think I'll be back so quickly. Again, my name is Sarah Dar. The pleasure of serving as the housing director for the city of Flagstaff. My name is not Jennifer Michelson. She's in the back. But I have the pleasure of giving a short introduction as I promised in my emails to you last week. So I'm going to stay out of the programmatic details as Jen is the expert on those. Okay, so I didn't figure that out. Do I just tell you when to change the slide?
Yeah.
Okay, next slide.
It seemed really different. I figured it out.
Okay, good.
Sorry.
No, you'll figure it out. So the purpose of today is really to share to get feedback from the Housing Commission on the work done by the working group. The working group, we'll go over that schedule, but the working group met many times, tossed around a bunch of ideas and came up with a framework that then Jen tried to put into words. She did a good job putting it into words. Ran it past that group again and then on to legal for legal review. So we're pretty decently far into this process. Our goal today, if you are comfortable with it, is a motion to approve forwarding the draft program to City Council with a recommendation for approval. So on our next slide, we have the just a quick reminder of Prop 442, which was approved November 8th, 2022. The reason incentivize private sector to incorporate rental units is highlighted is because that's the only one of these that we are discussing today. And it was the sole focus of the working group was to develop this program in and of itself. It's important to remember, and I shared this with City Council a couple of weeks ago as well, is that we're the first in Arizona to undertake activities other than infrastructure and construction type things with general obligation funds. That means we don't have a playbook. That means we don't have a city to call and say, hey, how'd you do this? Now we reach out to groups in other states, to other municipalities in other states, et cetera, to say, hey, but their state laws are different, their rules are different, there are many other things are different. So this is really, it's when you say you're on the bleeding edge of something, that's because it's painful. That's where we've been with creation. This was the first one we tackled with this. There are things where we thought we could go one way and then realized that we can't for whatever reason. So this has required a ton of research and some due diligence on our part in order to ensure success. So what is coming to you today has been reviewed by the attorney's office, has been read by staff a kabillion times. So it's fun to do things like this, to develop new things. It's also at times absolutely terrifying. Next slide, please. Thank you. It's important to remember the different roles in the oversight of bond funds between City Council and the Housing Commission. Ultimately, the City Council is the final authority, ultimate authority regarding bond funds. However, the City Council, and even this week, expressed immense respect for the Housing Commission and the recommendations coming out of the Housing Commission. And so the goal is to work in tandem, that we don't bring you something for you to prove that we don't think would have a chance with City Council, that we all lose in a situation like that. So the role of, this is the language in the creation ordinance of this body, is to do these things and provide oversight of any funds approved by the electorate for housing purposes. For the new folks, when the bond passed, and we went, yay, now what? We went straight to the attorney's office and said, what does oversight mean in detail? Like, we all understand what it means, but what does it mean for us to do? What it means is the Housing Commission reviews, explores, makes recommendations, and the City Council has the ultimate authority to approve or disapprove or alter those recommendations. But the Housing Commission was created to have a group of industry experts and interested citizens to guide things. So it's not staff sitting in our corner making up what we think might work. When in reality, we need the people sitting at these tables. So that's the difference between the Housing Commission and City Council's role, which I like to cover because sometimes it gets muddy. What does it mean? Adriana, if you could take you to the next slide, please. You're going to see this graphic a couple times today. And the reason I'm sharing it with you is for a very specific purpose, which is to talk about two projects that became intertwined during the process. So we have two separate things going on at the same time. Initially, in May 2023, this body met and established a working group to work on the rental incentive program. Working group met June, July, even into August. Jen did a bunch of writing here in August, some legal review. At the same time, coinciding parallel, not in an intersection, but parallel, there was a developer that made a request for funding from the city to help a project keep moving, a 220 unit project that is using 4% tax credits, not 9%, which is a different process, but still very similar. They benefit similar AMI levels for rental. So working group is working. Developer makes requests for funding. It could be bond funding. It could be rental incentive. It could be existing incentive policy, we call it IPLA, the incentive policy for affordable housing, which provides a schedule for either waiving or reimbursing certain fees for delivering affordable housing in our community. So these two things are happening, and staff is seeking solutions to a current lack of funding in the IPA incentive policy for affordable housing. That is another program that we typically receive allocations on a fiscal year basis on our best guesstimate possible of what we might see come forward or be eligible, or based off of letters of interest we'd already received. So while working on this, and the bond working group from the Housing Commission is working, staff working on how do we assist this developer, an idea came up of possibly splitting the $5 million from bond funds into the program that's being presented to you today and the existing incentive policy. This idea was presented to the working group with no mention of any specific developer or any specific project, because the working group's goal is to design a project for all, to design a project for anyone in the community that possibly could qualify for the money to have the opportunity to apply for it. The working group discussed it. They ultimately landed on a decision of keeping all $5 million together in the bond program. There has been some, as in my email to you, update email, I think 2 weeks ago today, where there has been a game of telephone in some cases, or a couple of things misstated that then were interpreted. The city manager made a statement during an agenda item at City Council that the Housing Commission had decided not to do this, not to fund the IPA with bond money. There's a simple misspeak on his part. Instead of saying working group of the Housing Commission, he said Housing Commission. This body has not seen that, has not seen the policy until today. So an alternative solution to assist this developer who has requested funds has been identified. It does not involve bond funds, and it goes to City Council on Tuesday. So it's moving expediently. That allows this body and then thus City Council to consider a program designed for all, separate from having any one developer or one development in mind in doing it, which was one of the goals of the working group. I'm looking at my notes, making sure I have everything. Those are my notes. I know there are probably questions of which I would do my best to answer, but also respectfully request that somebody bring me my water bottle. Thank you.
So then, are there any questions for Sarah?
So how was it resolved with the developer?
Thank you. I never go anywhere without my water bottle. So money has been identified. On council, the plan is to transfer fund from a contingency fund where funds were over budgeted. They were budgeted for an anticipated need that is no longer there. Into the incentive policy for affordable housing, with direction to staff to pursue these incentives for this particular development. So it's not bond money, it's money that our finance director said, hey, we budgeted this much, we think we're only going to need this
So
much.
what budget is this coming out of?
It pertains to the pension liability refinance of 4 years ago and is arguably not needed anymore for that purpose. And so I wish Rick Tatter could be here today, who's our financial guru, who I adore because he's always been super straight with me about money. And I have no reason to believe that he's not absolutely confident in his recommendation in these funds. And so one of the changes here is that staff is also going to, in the past, if you're a developer, some of you in the room had conversations with who said, hey, I have a project coming forward, it's eligible for your incentive policy for affordable housing. And we say, please send us your letter of interest, but at this moment, we're out of money. We're going to change that. As Justina has said in multiple meetings lately, we wish that we could fund everybody. We don't want to tell anybody bringing affordable housing into our community that we don't have the capacity to assist if we do somewhere somehow. So instead of saying, we likely will have additional budget available come July 1, we are now going to say, please define your need and let us see if we can identify funding within the organization. Are we always going to be able to do that? No. If somebody comes with a request for $10 million, I doubt Shaking City Couch Cushions is going to produce $10 million. However, there are times where things line up where I think we'll be able to identify money, or at least have a better idea of the identified need moving forward as well.
So then do you think the incentive policy should be more clear that it's not open to everybody without prior approval?
I don't quite, the
Well,
incentive policy is.
My understanding is that the code pretty much maps out what the criteria is for these funds. And this developer met all that criteria, and now it's kind of being argued whether or not they do qualify, they don't qualify, but we don't have the money, but maybe we can get the money. Should it be more clear upfront, maybe in their initial process, what they're able to qualify and what we can provide?
So the ability piece in my mind has not been a question.
Okay.
It's pretty straightforward. It's either a genius or an idiot argument. You either do meet the criteria or you don't. My understanding of the issue is that we didn't have the money in the housing budgets in order to do this. And historically, our answer has been, I'm sorry, we don't have that type of funding at the moment. We had never, ever before been permitted to seek alternative solutions, which have been sought in this case. And it wasn't housing staff necessarily seeking those solutions. This has been a large team effort because we do have a housing emergency, and we can say that, and we can do all that we can. We're still within an organizational structure that doesn't necessarily support fast movement for things. This brought to light a way that we can change what we do in order to better respond to identified community needs. So actually, I think did that answer your question? And with the so.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the incentive policy for affordable housing is an imperfect document. It's outdated. There's some kind of conflicts between some of the incentives, not on the financial side, on the regulatory side, between it and our current zoning code. This is part of what is being rewritten in the CAP code analysis process project. We have a third party, and you've heard this through the housing plan before. There is a third party consultant that is reviewing all of the city's codes and policies relative to building anything and everything. At the same time, they're doing a land availability and suitability analysis so we can quantify, do we even have enough land to hit the goals that are in the 10-year housing plan? What does our growth look like long-term? So knowing that we also have within the city, because they have been developed separately over time, incentive policies that conflict with each other between, say, sustainability and housing, or economic vitality and sustainability, et cetera. The goal is have them all examined, put it all on the table, and figure out the best way to create a policy, one, that works for people in our community. Because right now it provides a density bonus and we have developers saying, I don't care about a density bonus. I'm not interested in building more units. So we had Jen went through a process where she met with a number of developers, gathered additional feedback. All of that's been provided to the consultants. So that you will see, within the next year, recommendations of changes that have been made to our codes in order to fix where there's conflicts or to modify things that can make it easier, faster, better to build housing. Next month in October, you're scheduled to hear a presentation from Michelle McNulty, who's our planning director, who is our lead person on the project I just described. She'll update you on, she'll tell you who the consultant is, she'll update you on progress. And ensuring that the Housing Commission and other commissions relevant through this process are staying informed. All of the codes are being looked at through two lenses, housing and sustainability, and then looking at the codes overall. And so we've actually developed a great working relationship with our sustainability team. We've had some really not painful discussions, but discussions where we have to acknowledge that there are times where housing will make more sense and there are times where sustainability will make more sense, but neither should be forsaken for the other. And so you know this, my story, except for the poor new people who will hear it too many times. My favorite word is and. Do we have to have or housing or sustainability? Why cannot we not do both and work to achieve it? So next month, Michelle will go over that project with you. We felt this agenda was already. Yeah.
Project was and what happened.
October 27th. That's the next meetings.
That great, Jen?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, oh, you're, okay, yes. I heard Sandy, she's next to me, so that was like proximity more than anything else, but you wanna go next? And then-
Well, I have a question because I'm trying to absorb a lot of this and I know that we're talking about the bond, but based on what you're saying, so now there is money that's going to be funded into the IPA that was found from the fund you just talked about. Are there developers though, prior to that had asked for money that were told there was no money? I mean, are we concerned that there's a risk that, oh, you know, they will come back and say, well, but wait, I asked for money and there was none and now there's money? Is that not a concern?
This is a brand new development as of yesterday.
Oh.
So, yesterday. So we can look at that. I think given that this developer in particular is further along in the development process than anyone else that has indicated interest in utilizing. And so with the bond incentive, rental incentive bond program coming into place, we should be able to accommodate multiples.
Gotcha.
This one's it's about a timing issue. Oh, and that reminds me to tell you about the other thing that I was supposed to tell you, and I can do it on this slide. So there had been a question in the past, $5 million, it's only $5 million. But in our 5-year plan, we have only $2 million. And so can we only release $2 million or can we release all $5 million? What is in front of you today is consideration of publishing a fund notice of funding availability for all $5 million. Why, how did this change? Why was there confusion? Partially there was confusion is because housing staff was asking the wrong question, where we were asking to amend a 5-year plan. Apparently we don't amend 5-year plans, but they can be updated annually. Part of it is timing as well. So we can say we have a notice of funding availability and know that we could write 2 million in checks immediately after the process you're about to hear about. Also acknowledging that there are going to be developers that are eligible for this funding that are not anywhere near a spot with funds would be reserved for them. They're eligible, they can receive a notice of funding award, but we're not writing checks potentially well into the next fiscal year. So it gives us the opportunity to update that 5-year plan without, to update that 5-year plan during our upcoming budget process to indicate availability. If for some reason, we're ready to write more than $2 million checks through this process before June 30th, we then can transfer budget authority within our own programs, areas where we don't have money spent. Because the money's there, it's just budgeted in a different spot. So we can do, said academic, but that's not the word, administrative transfer between funds to ensure that that funding is available. Because the message has been very clear from this body, the message has been very clear from city council, from city leadership, we'd like all of this money out as fast as humanly possible. So that's why in the past you've heard, well, there's only 2 million, but there's 5 million. There's 5 million for the notice of funding availability, and we will administratively work out the details to make sure that if it needs to be spent, it can be. Again, I was Mr. Catalyst here because he explains that way better than I do.
Any other questions?
I don't know how relevant it is to this, so you can just say, I'm not gonna answer that question right now, but it's my understanding that there's something like 144 currently affordable units that are going to be converted to market rate units very soon. And so we're losing something like 25% of that 400 to 500 that this bond was hoping to increase. And so I'm really concerned that on top of the crisis we're already facing, we're going to see another hit to our most vulnerable people. Is there anything that this can do to help with that as quickly as possible?
By this,
The incentives here with the bond. It feels like there is because
the answer is yes and no. The combined price for those two developments is 200,
It's 22 million,
22 million.
just a little bit more.
I knew there were.
Sorry, just haven't been on it.
Well, it's 22 million. We don't have 22 million, so we're not gonna find it shaking the couch cushions. However, those units, there's 3 phases within that development. 2 of the phases have been put forward to be released from their tax credit obligations via the state. No one has come forward with $22 million to purchase them. However, there's another one coming. And I already know that staff and other community advocates are working on how do we find a way to not have this happen. We have never, ever had a tax credit development on the qualified allocation list before. This is a first for us. And so it's got to go through the State Department of Housing, and there's a couple subjective pieces to it, like pertaining to a developer acting in good faith, but there's no definition of a developer acting in good faith to ensure the sale. We're not negotiating higher prices, et cetera. It's just kind of like a you'll know it when you see it thing right now. So we're having some conversations to try to pin that down better.
So it sounds to me like these 144, whatever the number is, I don't know the exact number, but are going to go into market rate, are going to be converted to market rate. There's not much we can do about those, but there's another set that's potentially coming at us too, that maybe we can do something about.
Yes. Now, being put on that qualified application list does not mean the developer has to sell.
Right.
They could simply convert to market rate. They may not convert to market rate. They may convert a portion of it. They've not been super forthcoming with what their intent to do is. They don't to. They have to follow this process to publish, and it's smart. Yeah, it's probably time for me to turn it over to you so we can talk
So
about.
I have a question, actually, sorry, on IPA, not bond. So, can you tell us historically how much money has gone in annually into that fund? For the incentive, not policy, but the incentives? Is this a lot compared to the historic nature of that funding?
I worked with the city for 23 years. We've had an incentive fund of some type for that entire time. It was rewritten in 2009, right as we were hitting recession. Typically, we received an allocation between $100,000 to $200,000. We try to, again, do our best guesstimate of what we may see coming forward. We make our budget requests. You know, we probably won't give all the money because there are priorities. Once upon a time ago, we received $100,000 a year towards the incentive fund. But that number is very greatly over time.
And I don't know if our role as a commission could be to advocate for increased annual funding through the budget. Like, I don't know if that's our role or not, or if it could be. It feels like we certainly have some opportunity to say how bond fund should be spent as a recommendation, but do we have the wherewithal or the authority to weigh into this as well, to say, based on demand, based on the need, the historic level of funding in this fund is not sufficient, even given what we have in bond funds. And perhaps, is that a role that Housing Commission can play? And if I shouldn't even ask this question, I'm terribly sorry, but I just thought I'd ask. And if you can't answer, that's fine too.
No, go back one slide, please. That sounded super bossy. I apologize. Examine funding sources available for housing, lifestyle, make the recommendation to city council on potential funding sources, including bond measures, and provide oversight of any funds approved by the electorate. You used a word that I think was not appropriate for a role for the Housing Commission, and that was lobby,
Advocate? I
advocate.
did not say that.
Okay, no, I know, yeah, I'm sure you did, because we all know better about that one. I'm gonna wait and give you an answer at the next one, because,
It looks like Greg has a comment. Oh,
thank you, I can't see the screen.
Is it okay if I jump in? Yeah. Sorry to interject into the conversation. I think that the question just asked by the chair is very relevant. I'm not going to dissect it into what's within the commission's role and purview. By the way, Commission, my name is Greg Clifton. I serve as your city manager, and thank you for your service to this community, especially to our newcomers. Welcome and thank you. Chair, I want to let you know that that very thought has been in mind lately. We have a budget team here at the city. We meet weekly. We talk about a lot of things, both immediate and big picture. It's very much my intention, and I am not alone in saying this, to see that incentive policy for affordable housing fund not just reinstated, but brought to a level that's going to be meaningful to be able to do things a little bit on the fly, if you will, on short order, as has been the case with the development that's been talked about here. There's great importance to see that happen. These developments often come with quick timeframes and closings. That particular policy, at least as it currently exists, affords a little bit of flexibility to do things quickly. It is a fee waiver program. It is a little bit different than the city writing a check, but it is something that is relevant nevertheless. So our intention, and stay tuned on this, and we'll be glad to report back to you, is to very much see that fund reinstated and brought to a much higher level. Thanks for letting me jump in.
yeah, thank you so much for that clarification, City Manager Clifton. The other request I would have, I think, goes back to Jackie's point. So I know the State Department of Housing, when they have funds, different grant funds, they kind of have a thermometer on their website of like how much has been obligated or spent. Is there a way to do that with this fund? So that way, even if you're eligible, if the thermometer is empty, doesn't much matter. But is there a way to kind of indicate what level of funding is in that, if, or even
the rental assistance money as we move forward with this pot of money too.
I'm sure that there is, and we'll figure out how to do it.
Okay, thank you. 'Cause I find it helpful when I'm stalking looking at the, state. She hasn't been looking at that, so yeah, but I do think it would be a nice tool for transparency. Yeah. Any other questions for Sarah?
I would like to add that what you're hearing the city manager say is reflective of exactly how fast and neat this is and why it looked like things were intertwined when we're trying to work side by side, but having discussions that seem relevant to each other. And so this is developing very quickly. And then I would like to introduce the lovely, intelligent, excellent employee, Jennifer Michael.
Thanks. Thank you, the bond program itself. Thank you.
Do you want your water?
Yes.
I know I said to make room for mine. Thanks for the introduction. Sorry that it's a little awkward to be jumping in late. You can skip to the next slide. For something. One more. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everybody. All right. So does everybody have their handy dandy rental incentive? I made copies for everyone. I don't know if people are really visual. I think it might be helpful to follow along. And also we said that I didn't design this presentation to like literally follow a single section. I think for brevity's sake, I kind of combined thoughts into one slide. So if there's confusion, I can try to clarify that, but all right, so let me get a couple things. Well, so last May, when I met with this commission, I used a slide basically like this. And I'm going to do it again for the new commissioners and anybody else who's watching because I need a refresher. One of the main sources we really had to guide the creation of these bond funded programs, any of them really, is the approved ballot language and the voter information pamphlet. A lot, but since we were kind of creating something from scratch, we really did lean on that language. So there's some paragraphs in the pamphlet that educated voters about how bond funds could be used across those 4 affordable housing spending categories. And it was way too much to put on this slide here, so I'm just going to read it word for word. So the description of how the funds should be used for the rental incentive program says, proceeds from the bond may be used for any and all costs relating to the above referenced projects, like the rental incentive program, including the costs of designing, engineering, acquiring, administering, improving, constructing, reconstructing, and equipping such projects and any and all appurtenances or land related thereto. It's a legal mouthful, but I just wanted to say that verbally for the group that was the eligible uses we were really leaning on for the creation of this program. And even more helpful language, in my opinion, was that I kind of termed as an intent statement for the rental incentive program, that funding will be utilized to incentivize private developers, including nonprofits, to incorporate affordable rental units in market rate developments. This investment is anticipated to create an estimated 400 to 500 new rental units to the residents of Flagstaff, in addition to the market rate units in the new developments. So there was that language. And based off this information, it kind of gave us some broad framework to get started with about what we should be doing. And we knew we should, or we know we should be able to make these funds available to both for-profit and non-profit housing developers or providers, incorporate affordable units as part of new residential development, and that these funds should leverage other funding sources. So those were our guiding concepts when we going into the working group this summer. Next slide. This next slide again, I'm just including this original timeframe that Sarah had earlier for the new commissioners and anybody in the public, just to show what has happened since our May commission meeting, kind of where we are in the process. Which is a month ahead of time, by the way, we're a month ahead. So in May, we did form a working group of 5 commissioners. Thank you very much to them for volunteering their time and their minds. I will not call everybody out, but actually one is missing. She is not here anymore. So, over 3 meetings, they met 3 meetings this summer. The working group discussed the general framework for the program. Things like how to apply for the funds, who could apply, what the AMI income limits should be, and the period of affordability requirements, minimum or maximum funding limits per project, all kinds of like topics we kept space to kind of discuss. And so the 4th time, so after the 3 initial meetings where we discussed these concepts for the framework of the program, I spent a couple weeks drafting, brought it back to them on August 28th, exactly 1 month ago, just insane. But exactly 1 month ago, the working group reviewed the first ever draft language. And then they did that before it was sent to legal for their review. So in all fairness, this is the first time any commissioner has seen the draft program since it has been reviewed by legal and has been rolling last couple weeks. We were literally making changes yesterday. So it's just kind of the expediency, you know, we're trying to push out. So let me see. So, and I do want to say that I will be calling attention to the changes made in the draft as we go through the slides. I want to make sure everybody's aware. I probably won't say every single change we made. We don't have time, but I want to hit the big ones. So again, next slide. I really want to give some credit to the working group and their priorities. What was from the first meeting, within the first hour, I was amazed at how much they knew they wanted, what they wanted to do. So we went with that. That was great. It saved a lot of time and having decisive people. So I just want to acknowledge the working group's preferences in making all $5 million in funding available at once through a competitive application process, like a NOFA or an RFP or procurement. There's a different terms for it. I probably might not use them perfectly, but I'm going to say NOFA process, a notice of funding availability process, which is very similar to some of our other housing program funding programming. So we followed that. Other scenarios were discussed briefly as to how we would make funding available. I mean, maybe I was naive to think, I don't know, that maybe we'd release $1 million a year, similar to our incentive policy for affordable housing, which I am familiar with for the last few years. So that, I don't know, maybe they'll want to, release 1 million at a time for a few years. No, the housing emergency, put it all out there immediately, clear. And another priority for the working group was that the program be very flexible, just in general. At every turn, we were trying to be general, which we're always a fan of, but sometimes that becomes not preferable. But anyway, especially when it came to the role of the ranking committee, giving them some flexibility, their ability to evaluate proposals based on kind of looser terms and to see what was proposed. So I do want to speak to that. They wanted to make sure the ranking committee would be able to evaluate a wide variety of projects and make a funding recommendation based on various criteria tied to all kinds of community benefit that could be picked out of many various proposals. So another, I didn't put a bullet on here, I thought of it later, but they were also really concerned with or interested in accountability and compliance requirements with these public dollars, as we all should be. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. To ensure that public funds were being spent in the most efficient way, doing the most with the limited funds we have, of course. So So yeah, just to the right here, just really brief program overview. I will just call it like sections of the program. And I'm going to spend the next 5 slides hopefully quickly, getting into these topics. So we can begin, next slide, by covering, who are the qualified applicants for this funding, who's eligible, and what are the uses that are eligible for the funding, and what uses are not eligible. So kind of just, I'll put that up into this one big slide. A couple of slides ago, we had that pamphlet language identifying this funding was for nonprofit and for-profit developers. But over the course of drafting the program and after a legal review, we really did drill down to identify some more specific scenarios in which a developer would be eligible to apply for funding, including we're naming LIHTC developers or 100% affordable developers, market rate developers of mixed income projects, developers with existing affordable housing commitments with the city, that may be outlined in development agreements. I live in that role all the time. We have many development agreements with developers over the last few years where they have committed for units. They are not built yet. So we put a line in there that they would be eligible by their prior commitment with the city. They could at least apply. Developers that have benefited from any from other city incentive programs, whether they be a zoning incentive or a financial incentive, sustainability, workforce, economic vitality has a couple incentives, whatever that was, they're still eligible to apply for these funds. And we simplified the good standing language. It was kind of hefty, very prescriptive, I think overly prescriptive for just this kind of policy level document. So we simplified good standing. So now the program simply states that applicants with any outstanding debts to the city or any applicants that have received other city administered funding like CDBG or ARPA should be considered in good standing prior to receiving their bond funds. And the specifics of what exactly is good standing, how do you define that exactly? We're going to put that in either the NOFA application or possibly even the contracts. Either way, not in this document. It was too specific for our needs right now. Yeah. Oh, and I do want to not specifically on this slide. I apologize, but under this idea of eligible and ineligible uses at the beginning of the plan for the program, legal, they did strongly advise that we specifically identify disallowed uses for funding up front, rather than leaving that decision to a ranking committee further down the road, which is they're good, they're preferred. I'm happy to go with that if you guys are. And frankly, we had a hard time identifying specific activities or features or uses of a multifamily project that we absolutely were like, no way, we would never allow them to use that for that amenity. And also, we weren't so certain we'd be able to follow up on that. Following, like investigative, like financial, like following every dollar down to what it was spent on exactly. I think we wanted a little bit looser, but a little bit more room for that staff wise. So find myself again. So yeah, we've reduced the number of ineligible uses down to one bullet point. It simply states an ineligible use would be things like renovation, preservation of units, or rehabilitation of existing affordable or market rate units, which I think is fairly simple. Then we can get some other funding for those activities later. And yeah, and again, just to kind of justify some of these exclusions we made, things that were struck, we just wanted to go back to the idea that local dollars, these local bond dollars, should be more flexible than things like LIHTC financing requirements. We have the ability to be a little bit more broad with these funds, so let's not make unnecessary restrictions, I think. So we removed certain ineligible uses that we know are probably really helpful in like low-income housing tax credit financing. So let's go to the next slide. which is, the minimum threshold criteria. It's fairly standard. I think, I honestly can't remember in our working group meetings that we've drilled down super duper officially into what would make the minimum threshold, so that would make the difference between one proposal being tossed out and keeping one. But legal helped us with that. So things like, just it needs to be a rental project. We can't be doing ownership projects, obviously. So rental projects serving a maximum of 80% AMI, that is the maximum income limit for this program proposed. And the whole city limits thing. So we need to make sure we're building these rental projects within city limits. So it's just like a minor thing that slipped us. And then, of course, they have to have, all applicants need to respond to the NOFA application completely and provide all this required submittals. And the project needs to meet the eligible uses listed, proof of necessary entitlements, zoning, site control, and submit whatever documents they have to demonstrate project readiness. And the minimum requirement for that was a site. I don't know if I should say minimum requirement, but we are requiring site plans at this time. And we really don't think the working group got down into that level of what exactly, where do they need to be at in the development process. So we really drilled down into that, and for now we're settled on, we're happy with this. A developer needs to have an approved site plan to submit with their application. Okay, and then moving down to these additional application criteria or submittal criteria. When developers are applying for these funds, we want their applications to demonstrate their ability to deliver the project that they're proposing by showing us that they've completed similar rental projects. Whether that be in Flagstaff or elsewhere, frankly. The change we made here was removing the requirement that developers must have delivered rental projects in Flagstaff prior to, the project that they're proposing. We removed that because we thought again, it's like it seemed like it would have excluded a lot of potential projects. And we really don't want to unnecessarily dilute the pool of applicants. So we have that for developer experience. We want developers to confirm how close to construction they are. So I was saying with the approved site plan submittal. They must have an approved site plan to be eligible to apply, but funding priority would be given to projects that are further along in that development process. For example, we want to make sure we're supporting projects or prioritizing projects that are ready to pull building permits. This can be a lot of months in between getting site plan approval, civil plan approval, building permit or building plan review, issuing permits. It's just, so we wanted there to be like a spectrum of not all projects need to be at the same place, but we are inclined to award or prioritize funding for projects that have building permits issued. So lastly, we need to see the financial feasibility for their project. That's very standard for funding like this. All funding sources need to be identified, whether it's funding that's already been secured, funding that's in process, kind of waiting to hear, or funding that they're intending to apply for in the future. Okay, I'll move to the next slide is the evaluation criteria examples. This is not a complete list of the evaluation criteria that will need to be developed in the NOFA once this policy program is finalized. The ranking committee will review submittals against the evaluation criteria with a scoring matrix that I'm scared of, honestly. But we'll get that done. And that will help the ranking committee determine their funding recommendations in as fair of a manner as possible. So here's some of these examples. We thought of number of total units that would include market rate, percentage of units that are affordable, the cost per unit that requested subsidy, the amount of funding requested. Somebody's asking for all $5 million. Versus someone who's a much more we're gonna take that into consideration. Things like project readiness, as I said, how far along are they? How close are they to building? Things like developer experience, helpful, and other funding sources leverage, which is pretty huge. I mean, I don't think anything gets built anymore without however many layers of funding. So it's getting pretty extreme. We realize people will probably have a lot to share with us with that, especially for affordable projects. And I do want to mention a couple of criteria that were removed. We took out one of the criteria we had kind of just thrown out there as an example was the proposed use of the funds. Like we would use that information to determine the amount that we'd be giving someone. And we did away with that because at the end of the day, we want the developers to be able to use these funds, wherever funding is needed. We don't want to, artificially value one, use over another, acquisition versus construction. So, and like I said, we aren't necessarily going to be following up on what each dollar was spent on at different parts of the project. So as long as projects meet the activities identified under eligible uses, which are pretty simple, that is that statement again, the acquisition, site improvement costs, construction costs directly related to development of affordable housing units that will remain available to low-income housing households during activity. So as long as they meet that eligible uses, they're going to be good to go. And we also removed the criteria that a developer would be able to identify the number of households benefited over time by their affordable units. It just seems a little slippery the more we talked about it, since it can be kind of an arbitrary number, the strongest way to rank these projects. And it does kind of stray from the intent of the funds, which is to just deliver affordable units. So that was removed. Next slide is the award process. This will involve a couple different groups of people that do have specific roles. So we want to make sure the process we develop is in conformance with the guidelines stated in the establishing authority for the Housing Commission, as Sarah reviewed earlier in this presentation. How the Housing Commission provides their oversight of bond funds. That's all going to happen in this award process. So the first step, once the rental incentive program is approved, is to develop a NOFA application and the scoring criteria that would be used by the ranking committee, and to conduct the RFP process, collect everybody's proposals. Housing staff would be reviewing each application to ensure that the minimum threshold criteria are met. And then we will forward those applications to the ranking committee. And I do want to emphasize this third bullet because the role of the ranking committee is very important. And in the last month, we kind of specified that the ranking committee would be comprised of 4 to 7 people, including housing commissioners and minor amounts of city staff, with subject matter experts from the community to fill in any gaps. So developer experience is required. We might have to go out to the community or what have you. So we specify the composition of the ranking committee a lot more than we did ever get into the working group. So the ranking committee will review applications and make their funding recommendations. And at this point, the recommendation would be forwarded straight to council instead of coming back to the Housing Commission for their review. This change was made to streamline the process, frankly, while ensuring the housing commissioners do have a considerable role in the funding recommendations. I do want to call attention to that time. I would call it a time-saving adjustment. And as a side note regarding kind of time frame for this process, our goal is to have this NOFA process well underway with possible recommendations by the ranking committee by the end of this year. So we're almost in October. I mean, about 3 more months. This will, of course, be dependent on several factors, including when this policy is approved by this commission, when it's final and approved by city council. But for now, we're ahead of schedule. So yeah, then picking up for the rest of this process, after the ranking committee, council will consider the ranking committee's recommendations. They do have the authority to make changes to those recommendations, and once they approve funding at a council meeting, letters of award would be provided to applicants at that time. Then we would begin the work of creating individual contracts for those successful applicants, which will also need council's approval. So that is a very similar process we're currently going through with ARPA. Maybe we're almost done. It's very similar. Like slides. Okay. Lastly, we have this slide identifying the loan terms for successful applicants. The loan would be secured against the property with a promissory note for the deed of trust. No interest and no payments are required for the term of the loan, as long as affordable units continue to benefit the community per the affordability period identified in their contract. After a 30-year term, the loan would be forgiven on a pro rata basis over the next 20 years. Forgiveness was worked in there. It would be completely forgiven and released after 50 total years of affordability compliance. If a developer fails to honor their agreement and affordable units are either not delivered or they're turned to market rate or what have you, the lien would be called due and payable immediately at that time. So in the last couple of weeks of editing with legal, one of the bigger changes to the program I'd like to highlight is that we remove the option to award contracts for terms shorter than 30 years. Again, I want to acknowledge working group's preference that this program be very flexible. They wanted the ranking committee to be able to evaluate whatever was brought to them and make a recommendation based on proposed community benefit. So specifically, they really like the idea of allowing a shorter affordability period if, for instance, lower income households would be served by a project. So maybe a 15-year period of affordability, but very low income households served. So in reviewing the document legal, we followed that line of thinking down like into the scoring criteria and the evaluation process, and it started to get wonky and cloudy and murky. So because we had language prioritizing longer affordability periods over here, but then a preference for also lower AMIs and shorter affordability periods over here. And so just combining the whole thing and trying to make it super functional and simple, I guess, seemed very challenging in the brief time we had to try to work this over. So we made a quick decision to stick with a minimum of 30 years. Just tell you guys, grade 2 here, just to simplify the scoring criteria that would be developed later. We're just looking down the road and seeing a lot of struggle doing it well, accommodating a much shorter affordability period with and up to a 50 affordability period. So that's where we landed with this. Mostly also because we didn't have all the luxury of time to experiment, do different scenarios and run it by everybody. So, but here we are. So as a closing statement, basically done here, some parting thoughts. As we were refining this draft in the last couple of weeks, staff's guiding thoughts were to ensure the program requirements were broad enough to apply to multiple development scenarios, make it easy for a developer to spend the funds once they were awarded as a loan. And in several instances, we just had to return to the idea that the primary objective of these bond funds, this program, is to generate the greatest number of affordable units. So that's kind of what we would hop to when we needed to simplify. So this, I just want to go over council consideration is the next step after the commission would make their recommendation. In the interest of keeping this program moving really swiftly, we are currently on the council agenda for the regular meeting on October 17th. And 2023. At that meeting, they would have the option to approve and adopt the program by resolution as recommended by the Housing Commission, if it is recommended. And as Sarah mentioned earlier, council has the authority to substantially alter the program recommended by this commission. So if they did want to do that, they wanted further review, whatever that was, they needed more time with it. They could formally adopt the program at a later date and probably go request a work session. They would be able to do that on the 17th. So the final adopted version of this program will absolutely be provided to this commission. Just thought that would be important to make sure to share. And just so you're aware of housing staff's activities in all of this is if council adopts the program as recommended by the Housing Commission, our next steps would be to delve into the creation of that NOFA application, which might get really, really intense. And we developed that application based off the final adopted program. So if there's any kind of last minute changes, you know, we need to make sure that the whole application is speaking to those changes. And then one last one is the contract approval would be going to council into the calendar year, most possibly going for contract into 2024. So
Well, I was remiss, I forgot a part of mine, and then Jen was going to do it in hers, and she forgot part of hers, which was kudos and thank you to the teams that have surrounded us to be able to get this done early. Sometimes legal takes a long time to get stuff done because their workload is so heavy. The work of this commission, the work of the working group has been prioritized at every level within the organization. That we owe them great recognition and thanks. I'm sorry, Christina has already left. I did whisper in her ear before she left, but sometimes we're waiting on things, and this time we were absolutely on it. So we had great support from the organization all around. True, very, very true. It was in your notes, it was in my notes, and I think we both did.
Okay, so I'm gonna get to the next, yes, okay. So there are two possible actions the commission can take on this item today. It needs more work, or we're okay to make a recommendation and forward to council. So for this in the first instance, if it needs more work, the commission recommend, that staff work on the program and bring back a revised document that reflects certain changes at the October meeting. Or next slide. If the commission is on board with this program for the most part, and maybe just minor changes are desired, you can make a motion to forward the draft program to city council with a recommendation for approval with certain changes. And allowing for staff to make technical and conformity changes as needed. So those are this is the language you may be referring to. Yeah, we're making motions. Perfect. And that is, sorry, I realize.
Awesome. So I'm a little bit concerned about the time, recognizing that our meeting should end in 6 minutes. I've been told we can stay longer in the room. We can't lose quorum, or we can try and schedule another housing commission meeting to have a more thorough, robust conversation. Two options with that is like ASAP or move the October 17th council meeting. If we have to delay a recommendation to council, we don't get that timeline. So thoughts, comments, considerations from y'all, or how do you want to move forward?
So like, I'll just say it and keep forward.
Yeah. Okay.
I know other people before.
Okay. We have to leave. Yeah, who has to go? And anyone online too. I think we have an online person. Glenn, can you stay?
Yeah, I can stay.
Okay. So we can lose a few. We have to keep 7, I've been told. I was doing some frantic scrambling of numbers while we're chatting there. So, okay, so then thank you so much for your extra time. I appreciate that. And happy to open it up to questions that you guys might have. Oh, shoot, sorry, I apologize. First time. Is there any public comment, Adriana? Or
I have not seen any, well,
no?
not seen anything.
Okay. All right, so then questions, and I saw Moses had his hand raised. And Tyler, yeah.
Tyler has a hand up as well.
Oh,
Sure.
yeah, I also have a question. Just a small one. First off, just great work by the working group. I've only got one small question about the eligibility criteria. I'm curious what the thought process was for the second bullet point, percentage of overall units that are affordable. And in my mind, like a unit's a unit, doesn't matter if it's being built next to 5 market rate units or 50. But because it wasn't part of the working group, I'm definitely open to know what the thought process was behind that eligibility criteria.
Did we talk about that specifically? The percentage, we did want to make sure 100% projects were allowed.
Yeah.
Well, I think there needs to be a minimum.
Right, I think we were
Yeah,
just,
it was like 10, typically they're between 10 and 25% affordable in a new development.
But that would go back to like, are you gonna give a $10,000 reward to some developer? And do you want to go through the whole contract? Yeah. I think
Right.
that's-
and I think we were more like thinking like, you know, we would like to see if somebody was gonna do 50% versus 10%, maybe we would give more funding to the person who was gonna do 50% versus 10%.
Or priority to some.
Yeah, priority.
50%.
Yeah,
Just because we're trying to get as many affordable units into the,
yeah. That part, I don't know if I'm fully aligned with, because like a unit is a unit, but the first part you mentioned about how you don't want to be doing application and going through the entire process for someone who's only doing like 1 or 2 units.
right,
I am completely on board with that. I fully understand that. Would it be, this is just food for thought, would it be better to say that explicitly? Like, if you're gonna go through this application, you need to be doing a minimum of X units that are affordable as opposed to a minimum percent that are affordable.
Yeah, I just realized that we didn't, I don't believe we have the minimum 10% requirement written in.
Okay.
It was either not there or it got inadvertently
Yes.
deleted or dismissed or whatever, but yes, at the very minimum, to be eligible for funding. So this should be probably a minimum threshold criteria that your project is at least 10% affordable up to 100.
yeah.
So does that address one part, but what, I feel like you were getting into other.
Would it be better to state that as you have to have a minimum number of units affordable as opposed to a minimum percent? And the reason I'm going down that line is, wouldn't that knock a larger developer, even if they're doing the same number of affordable units? Like, if I've got someone who's doing 10 affordable units out of 50 versus someone who's doing 10 out of 100. I mean, either way, we're getting 10 affordable units. Do we necessarily want to elevate one of them over the other?
Yeah, well, I think that was our thinking with including, making sure we know the total number of units is considered, the total number of units in the project, whether they're all affordable or some of them are market rate. So maybe this just needs to be simplified in some way. Again, these are examples, so not necessarily the absolute final that would be in the submittal requirements in the application, but maybe, yeah, it's just a matter of show to us the total number of units in your project, in your development, how many of those units are affordable, and we can do the percentage ourselves.
I pile on with Tyler.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
It's identified in the bond language and in the process was 400 to 500 affordable units. So if we're looking at just percentages, how do we be sure we reach that number
So,
without running out of the money is kind of where I would go with what Tyler is asking. So if there's a minimum number of units instead of a minimum percent, then we know that with all applications that are coming in, we're reaching some approximation of meeting that goal. I don't know.
I mean, I think that, I mean, for me, from just listening to both of your comments and Jen's presentation and then considering everything that we talked about, I mean, I think we were trying to keep it pretty open-ended for just the flexibility. And I think that's probably why we went with percent versus units, but I don't want to speak for everyone, but.
I think too, we were also looking at like a small nonprofit,
Right.
like if they were only gonna do 5 units, like if we don't wanna set 10 or 20 or 30, and sometimes those state funding requirements, like I've looked at the financing and I'm like, I can't get 50 units, so I'm not even eligible, but does that even make sense across the state? No, because what the heck? So I think it was a balancing act of trying not to exclude small nonprofit developers who might do onesies, twosies, threesies, but also trying to get like a minimum where we're not going through everything, because it's a administrative process for the city, for the developer, for everyone, for 1 unit. So how do we get more units? How do we get them as a greater percentage? How do we have that balance? So we see what comes in, quite frankly.
Right. And to Jen's point too, like it's gonna be, there's gonna be a whole application that's gonna be developed. This is just kind of like, like the framework of the program, and this isn't like the nitty gritty, so. And I don't know, Jen, does everybody get to help approve and develop the actual application for funding, or you guys just, you take it from there? Okay,
Based off whatever the final group policy like is.
gotcha, okay.
Our guiding.
Does anyone else have any thoughts, well, about this issue, about percentage of units overall, if that comes out as a criteria? Yeah.
So I guess my question kind of goes in tandem with his, but a little different. Because he's talking about a percentage. So if I'm a developer and I'm gonna build 100 plex and I'm going to dedicate 20% of those, then I get 20 units out of it. But if I'm a small not-for-profit who can afford to do a 10-plex, but I'm gonna give 100% of my units, that's 10 versus 20. So if we're just relying on percentages for the same amount of funding, then I think we might be missing something if we're not careful.
But we're not relying just on the percentage, it's just one aspect of the criteria, so you could have 10 units that are affordable versus 20%, or 10% that are affordable out of 10 versus 30% that are affordable out of 5 or whatever, so it's still gonna come down to AMI, how many units, what is the affordability?
Well, and when you do like when you're on the actual like funding committee, it really is kind of subjective, right? Like you say, I mean, within whatever limits are set, basically whoever is awarding the funding can afford more or less regardless of the units.
So
That's kind of like,
prioritization to get higher numbers of units, potentially we would approve it.
yeah, potentially, I mean, depending on what happens in the future with the group that inevitably is going to choose to approve funding.
Is the term, I mean, maybe I'm oversimplifying, but is this where the term, cost benefit analysis really comes into play here, where
Yeah.
in the policy, we're conducting this overall cost benefit analysis on, requested subsidy per unit, compare apples to apples, and then, and so the cost benefit analysis, the number side of things, and then the project readiness element, where it really is a lot to juggle, obviously, but I mean, that's be fun. There'll be a lot of variety of projects, right, where we have, I mean, maybe the projects will all look fairly similar, who knows what we'll get. And it won't be so hard to weigh all the differences, because maybe they won't be like so different. But yeah, we wanted, okay, I don't know if that's.
I do want to compliment the working group on coming up with this structure. I think it avoids a lot of the issues with trying to fine tune these parameters, and then having to cycle back around and redo them. I think the whole grant process and making it competitive is a really good idea. And like whoever they are, even if you don't get the eligibility criteria perfect, they're probably going to talk through and like be able to balance those issues. So I don't think this is like a big thing.
No, but
Whatever.
well, I mean, like, definitely.
Food for thought.
And so then Tyler, are you saying, so the proposed eligibility criteria examples were total number of units, percentage of units that are affordable, cost per unit, amount of funding requested, project readiness, experience, and other funding sources leveraged. So all the other ones are good for you except that percentage?
Well, I do understand where you're coming from now. So you're saying you put that in because you'd want to make sure that smaller nonprofits aren't being knocked in, the funds aren't being hogged by larger developers.
I think that was part of it, but I also, I mean, I honestly, I'm at the end of the day more interested in unit count than percentage, and if that came out, I wouldn't care.
Yeah, so you,
I would agree.
I mean, we could just say number of total units in the development, whether they're affordable or market rate.
The number of
And-
affordable units,
and-
that's not in here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
The number of affordable units, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the key.
and then, so number of total units, number of affordable units, cost per unit. I think that's cost per affordable unit, probably. Amount of funding requested, readiness, experience, and other funding leverage. Because now you're getting both. You're getting, because we have to add market rate to the housing needs assessment says that. And then we're also saying affordable. So we get an idea of what they're going to propose for both. And you're right, percentage doesn't matter, right? Like if it's a huge old project and we only get 50 units out of 1,000, yay, that's a win.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, can I
Yeah.
ask, I don't know anything about what the sort of guiding document will look like for the people who are evaluating the proposals. But if we just remind them that the public voted for this to help fund 400 to 500 units, and we put that in the request for proposals, that the goal is around 400 to 500 affordable units, that will help guide this balancing of percentage versus total numbers. And that's something that the public told the city that it has to aim for, right? So that's a good place to put sort of a guiding policy, is in that, whatever that rubric is in the call for proposals, as well as in the evaluators documents to look at those proposals.
Because we can all do the math, right?
Right, yeah.
10,000, 12,500.
Yeah. I was doing that math earlier. Yeah.
I have a pile of other questions.
Okay.
The first one's relatively easy. You just mentioned the criteria and you said developer experience. And the question I have about that, is that just general experience, or is that specifically developer experience related to affordable housing and affordable units?
Yeah, I actually had that same question. Because,
let me refer to.
Because I think that would also help some of the nonprofits who would be proposing if it was specific to experience with affordable housing.
Well, and when you apply for like state funding, it's both. I mean, essentially, you're giving your resume, right? So
Yeah.
you're saying like, we've done all this wonderful, amazing work that shows we know how to work with architects and engineering in the city and all the things. And then we've also done this that shows we can layer this assistance program, this leverage, this LIHTC. And so I think it is for the committee that's reviewing it to take both of those into consideration. Because I would expect a developer to give you every way they're wonderful.
yeah.
Or, but I could also imagine some developer coming from, I don't know, New Jersey saying, we've developed millions of units, none of which have been affordable, but you didn't say you wanted experience in this particular realm, and making an argument in court that they should have been considered more heavily or something like that. I just worry.
And maybe we say developer experience, including experience with local construction and affordable housing development.
And Arizona regulations. and stuff.
Correct, yeah, like something, because you guys can have incentivized local experience for past RFPs. I'm looking at the city. Sorry, Sarah.
Let me start getting my steps.
I know this for a fact, because I.
Well, procurement wise, we are not able to provide a direct local preference. It's illegal. We can't have a direct local preference. We can say, display experience in working with our local climate, soils conditions within Arizona laws and regulations, that type of thing. Because we have had folks come to build who were shocked that they found rock on site. And so now we try to say, you know, hey, by the way, you have experience locally, it's not a local preference.
Right.
It could be someone from anywhere, but it's experience working with. That,
Yeah, that satisfies. me.
Like in the winter, like they know it's coming.
Yeah, like you're right.
Right.
yes,
It's not
A lot of people come here, don't know it snows.
I mean,
Yeah.
like that's what real pictures.
Yeah.
McMillan Mesa has made it
Correct, yes.
So that kind of drove down into that level of, that's something that we could, figure out in the application and the scoring criteria.
In the matrix.
My question to the group is this literal sentence under developer experience, developer or development team, if a collaborative partnership must demonstrate experience successfully completing rental housing developments of similar scale. Do we want to wordsmith this sentence to include the word affordable? Do we want to leave it?
I would like to see affordable in there, and I'd like to see local conditions or something like that in there if that's possible, but I'm only one person on the commission, so.
I guess I would say I think we would be a little bit careful
Yeah.
with doing that.
I
And we
agree.
wanted to make it really broad. And ultimately,
Yeah.
if a developer from New Jersey comes and will give us the 500 units at the lowest rate, we'll then exclude that person because they don't have local experience.
That's what I was gonna say too, as a
Yeah, we tried to be, we wanted it broad so that we got the most number of proposals and allow the committee to rank where they thought those sat.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing as a developer, like, you know, my company is out of California, but we do stuff in Utah, but we do stuff here. And so, you know, I mean, I think definitely it's helpful if somebody knows that it snows and somebody knows that we have rocky soil. And I think, you know, that's, and not to continue to harp on the same point, but to just go back to things that are gonna be addressed by the committee that eventually affords the funding are gonna be developer experience and looking at their resume and, you know, like, for us, like, the only thing I would say is, I'm obviously happy to sit here and go through the nitty gritty with everybody, but this is more of a, you know, this is a framework, this is a high level. Let's get it to council so we can keep moving forward, so we can get the funds out, you know?
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Moses, did you have another question?
I do, I have two more questions. The first is this, will these funds and these contracts or loans rather be subject to the qualified contract loophole?
No, right? No. Because it's a whole different process, and this is a loan to whoever against the property.
A project that's funded, if there's a LIHTC project that's funded with the bond funds, the LIHTC project
Would be,
could technically undergo a qualified contract process as part of the ADO, you know, LIHTC
right,
regulations, although I don't know the best way to describe this, but they essentially incentivize, in order for tax credit funding, they incentivize developers that waive.
so that's where I'm going to go with this was,
Yeah.
I would really like to see that incentivization in here if there's a LIHTC ask associated with this as well, say,
Oh, okay.
I would like to see developers waive that qualified contract loophole so that we don't end up with somebody deciding they don't want to do it anymore and finding that loophole a way to get rid of 50 or 100 or 200 affordable units.
I agree with you. There's been some policy change since the units that are within that qualified contract process now, the state has changed. Much regulation surrounding it, much the rules surrounding it. I think the other fail safe is it would have to pay us back.
So that leads me to my next.
So the next, so they would be required to, if they ever became not participating in affordable, the money would be due and payable. But I think us asking for a waiver of the qualified allocation or qualified contract, thank you, brain slow, is a completely reasonable thing. If they are like tech development, if they're not,
Then it doesn't apply. And then, Sarah, before you leave, the second question that I had was, is there any incentive against, other than just paying back the direct loan with no interest and no fees, is there any incentive against people ending the affordability? In the sense that, can we add a fee? If you end this early, you will also be subject to paying an extra fee on this loan. Is that something that can be done? Right, because,
Kind of like a prepayment penalty or something.
right, like
Yeah.
a cancellation fee or whatever the right term, prepayment.
We definitely didn't address penalty in that regard, when we briefly discussed the loan terms. I mean, all I could say was that if the affordable units are no longer affordable, the loan is due and payable immediately. Assuming this is all prior to the termination of your contract. So other than paying up, I'm not sure we can answer that without asking an attorney, because I don't know what the rules are.
Right,
Municipalities have to be careful to not be a lender.
right,
We are balancing investment with community benefit, and the more we behave like a lender, the weirder things get.
Right.
And so I'm not comfy giving you a yes or no. But we would certainly love direction on this going to council. Is there a preference that that's in there if it's legally feasible?
I mean, my guess would be no, just as somebody who like deals with loans a lot, I doubt that they'll let you put that in there because you are gonna essentially be acting like a lender. Because that's just a fee. I mean, you're basically profiting off of it, which I think is a great idea if you could make it work, but.
yeah, I'm not looking necessarily at a profit, it's more, in my mind, a negative incentive to
Right.
stop in the program
I'm
early.
just, but if you think
Yeah.
about it, you're really just putting that money in your pocket. So that's kind of what it is, though. I mean, I know that's not your intention for sure, and I love the idea for sure.
We can ask legal.
Yeah.
Or could it be an interest rate that accrues on the loan that is forgiven after 30? If you hit 30, the interest that's accrued is forgiven, but if it's before that, then it's like 1% simple interest a year,
Right.
Yeah.
just to make it more complicated. Yeah, it's on the look, and I was like,
Yeah. You know, to,
Yeah.
Are we gonna, so with this, we can just ask people about this idea of an additional negative, like a penalty.
For an administrative fee.
We ask the
an admin fee.
question,
Yeah.
say, housing commission. I'm gonna use the word uncomfortable, is uncomfortable with the way someone could just pay us back, decide they're done, pay us back. And would like to further incentivize, or de-incentivize someone, such as there are home buyer assistance programs that have, especially employer assisted housing programs where, half is forgiven, 1/5 every year for 5 years, but you still have to pay with the intent of creating longevity.
Right.
And so we know that there are tools on that side. So if we say housing commission is interested in people not buying out early, what tool can we use to help ensure that that doesn't happen, knowing that there will be situations where somebody's got money and says, I don't really care, but at least it's an effort. Am I capturing that even semi?
Yeah, I mean,
I think so.
Okay.
Is there anybody opposed to that kind of research being done by legal to determine feasibility and legality?
And then us taking it straight to council. If it's legal, we put it in. If it's not legal, we leave it out and without coming back to you guys.
That was gonna be my only question, is the only thing I would be concerned about is balancing it against the need to move this along quickly to council
That,
with this delay.
yes.
I would say if it doesn't delay going to council, I would think.
But can we get like a FYI back to us? So we know?
Absolutely, absolutely. We can send you an FYI, and you can't discuss it amongst yourselves. But we can send you a hey, and we will send you a preview of, we're gonna have the staff summary written. I'm not gonna say the date out loud because that will may cause a panic attack, but it's next week. And so, we're going to, but then it's a draft agenda on the 3rd for council consideration on the 17th. And so even if we are unable to fully determine it
Next Wednesday, we have some time where we can alter it in there within that week. So our goal is to not delay it going to council or full council.
Just making sure, and I mean, this is probably kind of a dumb question, but if we do get paid back early, obviously those funds can go to more people, right? So maybe they could structure it like bringing the money to like the present value of the money or something, and then like, so basically like, you need to make it into today's dollars, so we basically have the same amount of money that we gave you now to go.
So inflation.
Yeah.
So it's not a city project.
Yeah, so if we can have the
Five,
same
30
money.
years before.
Exactly.
Only bought.
I mean, I love that, like not adding an administrative fee or.
Right, make sure we don't call it a fee, maybe if we're just like, hey, we gave you this much money, and since you're giving it back early, we need to have this much money again.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a great idea.
Okay, we'll explore all viable options towards the stated goal.
As I say, is the language in the loan term section flexible enough to accommodate that already? I mean, there is language in there around the carrot, like you get the pro rata. I don't think I pronounced that right, but you get the forgiveness after 30 years.
But it doesn't include.
It's something that we would add if we got some sort of confirmation that it was feasible. I don't see why we wouldn't put that in the policy statement as a loan term.
Yeah,
Especially if we have a thumbs up, if it was.
Yeah, I'd rather it be spelled out. I would rather it not be questionable in the long term, because when we start arguing the intent was, we're gonna lose every time.
Or yeah, if the developer isn't aware of that, reading the NOFA, you know.
Well, and it doesn't say anything about any adjustments for any kind of early termination or for early determination, so I would like the language in there, if it's legal.
yeah, okay, and everyone's thumbs up. And it is it Glenn?
Glenn is. I think comment.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, just didn't want to forget you, okay. Moses, did you have anything else?
Nope, I'm done.
Okay, Christine did it.
I was just gonna mention that it could be something you include in ranking too, like do they need the money that it's gonna cost them more to just pay back the loan versus cost them in potential income for keeping long-term rentals, so just considering, 50 years, if they're only asking for a small amount of money, why wouldn't they pay it off? Because it's gonna cost them more to keep them affordable, so that's something to consider when you're evaluating applications.
Right, I mean, if income on that, or if the cost to pay it back alone is $100,000.
You're grouping in one thing, right?
Yeah.
Consider it in a year, then, yeah.
Any other questions, comments?
Two, I guess, one kind of on page 3 under the project eligibility. One of the things that we talked about, I think when we were kind of redlining, was that included design and construction. I don't know when Vigo went through it. Is it important to have that or not, just to make sure that the design cost would be eligible for reimbursement?
Under the eligible uses, right?
Yeah.
That was not intentionally deleted, so if it appears in that bond.
It is in the bond.
It is in the bond.
Well, yeah, we can reinsert that right word.
Even broader and saying pre-development expenses.
I think we had something like that.
We did kind of shorten it up, I remember.
I just want to make sure it's broad enough that it can be used for the design piece or engineering costs, things like that.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys want to go word for word with the bond language, or.
I mean, I would suggest that stay pretty close to the bond language so that there's no public person who decides to get upset about it and comes back to the city and says, this is what we voted for, but this is what's written.
Yeah.
Right? I'd be really worried about that.
Okay.
We're not immune to that kind of response.
Yeah, bond language would be good, then there's no questions.
Yeah.
That is the second one on page 4. So one of the things that was added was that the applicants must include evidence of zoning approval and site plan approval. And I guess just maybe a little discussion around that, because thinking through, if we're pushing this out at the end of the year and we want a NOFA, and there's a developer who's a couple months away from an approval, we're excluding them from doing it. And one of the things we talked about was making this as broad as possible to get the applications. Ultimately, the ranking committee could say, hey, that's too far away from an approval. We don't want to give you those funds, or we're gonna deprioritize that individual. But if we put that in there, then they cannot apply if they don't have it. And I get there's some risk if there's no zoning or site plan approval, that maybe it never gets it, and ultimately we would lock up those dollars waiting for that to happen. But I mean, if it's 2 months away and they think they're gonna get it, and they could give us all 500, or maybe they give us 800, pie in the sky, but we're excluding those folks from doing it. So just curious why that landed in there.
Or something like that.
Something to the effect of likelihood of successful site.
Yeah.
Zoning approval or whatever.
I think it was just the push and pull of this concept of project readiness.
Right.
Became really important to us too, like, because of the expediency of like, these people are ready to build, like, and we did address the 18-month time frame for, after award, a developer has 18 months to get all of their stuff in order, or I should say, get their project ready to be built. So we kind of identified that flexibility with that time and like give people the time they need. So I guess the idea is like, being disallowed from, being disallowed from.
So the way the language is, a developer could not submit an application without zoning approval and site plan authority.
Which we limit.
There's kind of some
significantly.
conflicting language there too, because if somebody has a purchase contract, right? Like anybody can have a purchase contract and that can go on and on and on and on and on. So like, you're likely not gonna have zoning approval and a purchase contract at the same time. Like, I mean, you can maybe if you.
Or like a contingent contract, like.
So I feel like you would, if you're gonna have zoning approval, you're probably already gonna own the land. So.
Not always,
I mean, not always, but.
Conditional use process while we were under contract, and then once we got it, then we closed.
Yeah, I mean, that can definitely happen. I'm just like, yeah.
Yeah, I would almost propose you go back to something like the 18 months, or, must have it within 18 months, and then you could ask for the funds back, or maybe it's even shorter. But then at least we're allowing them to apply, thinking that they're in process of getting that zoning or site plan approved.
Yeah, it's always so hard to try to estimate time frames for another developer's project, but, we have the 18 months in there.
Can we change it so that they have to provide evidence of where they're at in the zoning and regulatory approval process? So the ranking committee could know, hey, they've got their zoning, or their planning and zoning commission meeting for their CUP is next Tuesday. And they wouldn't have made threshold, but we can see like, okay, by the time they applied and reviewed it, now they've got it. And that could be at the discretion of, like, it could be a point process in the ranking committee readiness. And it's like, if you get this, you get 5 points. If you get this, you get 10. And if you have building permit, you get 100. I mean, just kidding. But the farther on you are in the process, the more readiness points you get.
That was absolutely the philosophy behind that second bullet. But I guess I'm most concerned about what are the minimum requirements. Like if a project is submitted and they don't have site plan approval, do they get? I think that's what I'm super curious.
That's a
And like for the purchase contract, like, that's something we should hopefully get to see, because some purchase contracts are contingent on not getting, so if you don't get zoning approval, then the purchase contract terminates.
Right.
And then, then where does that leave you?
Well, there was other language like, project readiness means like correct zoning is in place, or show some of the like submittal requirements. A lot with like LIHTC was what's the term? Planning and zoning does it all the time. Zoning
Verification.
verification, yeah, zoning verification. So we eliminated that idea that somebody would have, like, that the city has to, provide a zoning verification for this application.
Just seemed like an unnecessary thing, but we still are trying to talk about this idea of having the correct zoning in place.
I mean, on the subcommittee, I was kind of I thought zoning had to be, I mean, I was on the opposite of what Sean's saying. I agree, though. I mean, now maybe we do need to give more flexibility to the ranking committee, to the readiness. Like, if we're gonna exclude arbitrarily a project that's 2 months away from getting it, I see the point. So other federal funding and state funding really requires the zoning piece. Like, before they're gonna give you millions of dollars, you've gotta have it in place. Could we be more flexible? I get it. So, I, coming from the committee perspective, and I was the voice on the other side, I recognize this request to not have it be a yes or no gatekeeper thing, but to have it be more of a flexible scoring criteria.
Scoring criteria. It is this.
Are the funds going to be distributed on a forward funding basis or on a reimbursable basis?
Forward, I believe is the right term. The money would be provided as a loan and not reimbursement. After they've already spent money, then they prove to us what they spent money on, and then we reimburse them. We realized that was not, forward. It might be a mix.
Okay.
Of it, depending on what the project is and what their expenses. If they have already purchased the land,
Right.
and they are going, and that is eligible, that could be reimbursement.
Right.
Coupled with something else that, so we talked with finance about, we're not going to get the contract from city council and write a full check the next day.
Right.
It's going to be a what makes most sense, in an effort of meeting developer needs, but also balancing our responsibility as stewards of public monies.
So the reason I ask is related to this question of zoning approval and all that, right? Like if there's a project that the committee really wants to fund, but it's not approved yet, it might be a conditional funding rather than a definite funding, and say, on the condition that you meet these set of criteria within 6 months or whatever, then this funding could be provided. And let the developers work through going through all of that regulatory approval before the funding is provided.
And we were doing that in the programs with low income housing tax credit developers seeking a local contribution. We get the local contribution approved through council, conditional on the award of the LIHTC fund. If they don't get the award, then we don't make a local contribution.
Yeah.
So we have.
So that might make it easier to balance the consideration.
So that would be great if it was conditional, because then, like if somebody is under contract or something like that, then once they own the land and have zoning, then they get the money.
Does that mean that needs to be the idea of conditional funding allocated? Would that be under a loan? I'm just trying to place like where did this information go?
If I'm imagining myself sitting on this committee, which I'm not volunteering for. One of the things that I considered when we're talking about project readiness is how far along in this process are they? If I rank everything else at 100 on every other part of the rubric, but they're not ready to go, maybe I want to give them conditional approval for the funding because we know it's going to happen, but maybe some slip up happens and it doesn't happen as quickly as we thought, but that money isn't spent by the city on a project that isn't ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where I was going with like the 18 months that's for permits. If you could put in criteria around zoning approval, site plan approval that are shorter maybe. So like if you were to give it to them, you're not locking it up for a longer period of time while they're waiting.
Right, and then
You do a conditional approval.
if they don't meet those approvals, you can pull that conditional funding back and open it up to the next proposal.
Well, and you'd almost need something like that for funding, like, because obviously we're not gonna fund an entire, giant development. So somebody's gonna have to go out and probably get, especially if you're a traditional developer, you're gonna go out and get a construction loan maybe, and then that could take some time. And then what if that doesn't go through for some reason? I mean, there's a lot of considerations there, I guess. So it could be that the ranking committee recommends funding, recommends conditional funding, and then you're on a waiting list or your project is not recommended for funding. And then that would go to county council, gets to make the ultimate decision. This committee is just gonna make recommendations.
Yeah.
Does that seem good for y'all? Okay. Next questions, comments? Can I just say, I want to go on record, so I appreciate being on the subcommittee. I appreciate my subcommittee members for hanging out, and the staff that helped get us to this point in this time frame. I think that's an amazing accomplishment. I do want to point out, one of the things I really like about this is that it is a loan. And it is secured against the property, and it is either repayable after 30 years or not after 50. And that gives us the opportunity to use this money to buy additional affordability. I think this is a great way of balancing the needs of the private sector to have capital to build things. You know, I'm a developer, and if I have a zero interest, no payment loan, like that's, ooh, you know, amazing, quite frankly, in your financing stack. When your accountant's like, what's the payment on this? And you say nothing, and they are surprised at that. So I do think there is a benefit to the private sector and how it's designed, but I also think it balances a community benefit to either get the money back or to buy longer affordability. And I think that is key. And I truly hope City Council recognizes that value and moves forward with the recommendations. If we recommend moving it forward to them as designed with the changes we talked about. Because we did spend a lot of time trying to talk about how we be good stewards of these limited dollars and show the community we're spending them wisely and getting units out of the ground. So I just wanted to go on record saying that piece to me was really important and excited to move this forward.
Um,
Do I have to read things?
I think we put it specifically up so it would help people prepare motion statements. So I don't know if we're ready.
And would that motion need to be amended to say with the exploratory work to determine legality and feasibility of repayment cost if it's not a 30-year?
I don't know if we need to identify in the motion every single change discussed, or if that's this language allowing for technical and conforming changes. Does that encompass all of the comments that we will try to digest?
So technically conforming changes means it's not substantive. It means that we use the word fostering community instead of fostering community, like, or we need to renumber something. That's technical and conforming changes are typically not substantive changes. I think what we can do is we can list the suggested changes, and then the person making the motion says with the changes just listed, rather than someone having to list them all individually. And I'm only saying this because I've watched the council do it.
It would be good too for us to summarize all of the important items that you guys did want to see changed, because my notes are kind of not set up in that manner right now. So should we review, what was the first step? It was including, I guess I'm not sure what meets that threshold or not.
So it was the discussion of the number of units versus percentages. I don't know if that needed some clarification in the where that needed clarification.
That was.
That was working in the RFP to describe the goal was 400 to 500 units.
Yeah. The ranking committee and award process, I think were we just gonna take out percentage of overall units, right? Yeah. So I eliminate the percent of units that were affordable under evaluation criteria examples, but add in the number of affordable units in addition to the number of total units, right?
Okay.
Number of affordable units. Sorry, I'm doing both, typing and doing it.
Okay.
I think there was also to explore the feasibility and legality of a charge or cost if the affordability period was less than 30 years in implementation. Right?
Yep.
Yes.
Disincentive.
Period is less than 30 years. Okay. Legal. And then we were comfortable with that going directly to council based on that assessment by legal.
Yes. And then we wanted to have any Light Tech developers waive their qualified contract loophole, right?
Yeah.
Developers waive.
We need to identify the 10% minimum affordable qualified.
Loophole, minimum 10% affordable. Eek. And then to get rid of it, so to get rid of the, it was a, what's it called, eligibility,
The site.
yeah.
Oh, to make that long.
The threshold, it was a threshold, right? Site plan
Oh,
and zoning threshold. And move that over to, ranking, criteria in the, right?
Design, pre-development.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I'll go with that.
And, but it was to just change it to the bond, yeah, just, yeah, that one used to be a. That was okay, okay, all right, perfect, thank you. Okay, what did I miss?
I don't think you missed any.
Okay, so I'm just gonna say it again.
Yeah.
For posterity. Okay, so the recommended motion approval, if it happens, would include the following. One, to explore the feasibility and legality of a charger cost if the affordability period is less than 30 years. Two is to eliminate the percentage of units that are affordable from the evaluation criteria, but to add in the number of affordable units in the evaluation criteria.
Before you go, I'm sorry, Sarah said something about a 10% requirement. Is that relevant to this part?
Including, that we need to identify the 10% minimum affordable contribution as a threshold, like now the threshold.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I hadn't gotten to that yet, but, okay, so add in the number of affordable units. If it is, clarify that if it's a Light Tech development, that the development must waive the qualified contract loophole. Add as a threshold that there is a minimum 10% affordable in the development, as defined as 80% AMI and below, right, as affordable, right? And then we're eliminating the requirement to have site plan and zoning approval as a threshold and moving that over to ranking criteria in the ranking matrix, scoring matrix. Okay.
And then one more part was maybe the ranking criteria would include, maybe some funded, conditional funded, and wait lists, or is that even relevant to this?
Oh, that the ranking committee is empowered to have funded, conditionally funded and not recommended for funding, right? Is
And
that
maybe a wait list.
or wait list, okay.
Yeah.
So ranking committee. So funded recommendation. What did I just say? Conditionally, conditionally funded, wait list, and a heck no. Just kidding. And a no thank you. Not recommended. That's unfortunate.
More professional.
Thank you, sorry. I totally got this taken down for you. Not recommended. Okay. So if everyone's good with that, I'm using Heather's thing of like, okay, then I'll ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to forward the draft rental incentive bond program to city council with recommendation for approval with the listed changes and adjustments and allowing for technical conforming changes to be made by staff as needed.
Second. Awesome, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? That's right. Okay. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Oh my gosh, this is the coolest meeting I've ever. Thank you for staying late.
Yeah.
I don't think we got it from Glenn. Oh, Glenn, are you still there? And can you, A or nay?
Yay.
Yay. Okay, I'm just trying to get it. Thanks for keeping this, formal. Thank you for staying. Let's run real quick if we could. There's no general business under 7. Any items under number 8? update from our housing authority liaison, Moses?
Yes, we had a meeting, I think it was last week or earlier this week, I can't remember. We asked several, updates to the, required, documentation for, and, I'm sorry, I'm messing this all up. We agreed the utility allowance update, we passed that, we agreed to that utility allowance update. We agreed to the payment standard update, and we agreed to the, plan amendment for stability vouchers, that was presented by our city staff.
Can we get those payment standard updates, the utility standard updates sent to the whole commission just to see how they've gone up? I mean, I think that's.
Actually, they decreased, the
The
utility.
utilities decreased, but the payment standards went up.
They went, yes, sorry.
Based on fair market rents. So yeah, it's just interesting if nothing else. So yeah, okay.
Sadly, it's still years behind, but it's better than it was before.
Perfect. Thank you, Moses. Any updates from commissioners? I have one. I'm passing out, so Housing Solutions does, whatever we call it, affordable housing needs assessment document regularly. I won't say annually because we sometimes miss, in partnership with the city of Flagstaff Housing Section. So thank you for your help. This is just basic information that is available in multiple sources, whether it's census, fair market rent, data from Realtors Association, but we try and condense it into a digestible form and put it out. This will be available on our website, but I just wanted to give you a hard copy in case you're curious, and we'll start pushing it out via social media too. We're also doing our rental attainability report, which is a survey of multifamily properties in town. I think we have 3 more properties to reach, so I'm hoping to have that fun, beautiful spreadsheet out to you guys all by the next Housing Commission meeting, so you can see what our survey indicates are the actual rents, not HUD fair market rents in our community for data purposes. So stay tuned on there. I'm happy to share data as we get it. Any other commissioner thingies? And then the last one was staff. Any updates from Housing Center?
I think we're gonna just get people back their time and just, if there's anything vital, we'll email you. We can email that too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This is all I've been doing for weeks, because like, so I feel like.
No, I think you just heard my. Perfect.
That was nothing.
Thank you all, and I'll adjourn, and I so appreciate the extra time today in addition to your regular time, so. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for going over the change as well for me.